we fancy a swim, there's a swim pool as well. Or hell, we could even...
He kept speaking, but I'd stopped listening to him. He stood up, seeming to push away any remaining thoughts of the matter from his head.
We need to be getting onto a more...
Many, if any, sights. Only this one. I turned to the left and aimed my flashlight at the wall. Body fall past me, missing me by less than a foot. For a moment, shock kept my mind from working until I realized who I'd seen in the split-second flash of lightning. I screamed out into the dark, but when the lightning flashed again, I saw no sign of him floating in the waves. Only the bow of our ship as it finally slipped below the waves. I shouted the man's name again, the wind tearing the cry from my lips and off into the storm.
Nathan, he's gone!
Came a cry from below me. I shot a look down, seeing the captain looking up at me with a horrified expression.
Get up the ladder!
I fought my emotions for a moment, then climbed as quickly as I could for the railing. A few moments later, both the captain and I hauled ourselves over, collapsing onto the wooden deck with sputtering coughs and groans. When I raised my head, it was to see the ashen face of Wyatt looking down at us.
Where's Kenny?
I took in a shaky breath and shook my head slowly at him. I saw the shock and horror flash into his face. The same happened to all of the men standing behind him. For my part, I simply felt numb. Even though I'd lost my aunt to ovarian cancer in 2009, lost one of my mom's family friends to a brain tumor in 2012, I never actually seen someone die before. Not in real life, anyway. My mom spoke up, his voice shaking only for a second before hardening.
As hard as this may be for everyone, we need to get inside and out of the storm. We'll have time to be able to grieve later. Right now, we need to get away from the wind and rain before we catch pneumonia or hypothermia.
His words seemed to bolster everyone, even myself, and we all stood, gathering our supplies and moving to find a door inside. After a few minutes searching, we found one, and after snapping on the waterproof flashlights we all had, we stepped inside the ship. Okay, I've got to say, that was awesome. That entire sequence of like the ship going down and the storm and them rolling and everything and having to catch the ladder. Oh, that was so good. You just said yeah without the British accent.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, no,
no,
yeah,
I mean that's what they sound like. So, I mean, not every word is going to be so colourful.
No. That was a break. That was a break for sure.
I think I'm still in my accent. I'm still doing it. It's just sometimes you sound like that. Okay. You know? Not everything's some fruity, delightful piece of ginger. You know, I don't know what I'm supposed to tell you.
Anyway, that whole thing was great. I really loved it. The descriptions of like the captain and the foul moments, watching the ship go down, like the terror of it, the intensity. That was great. That was awesome. And now how cool of a concept. There's a ghost ship in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of this storm that they have to go on to. And like, oh man, that's so cool. This is great. This is stellar. I love this. Okay. Anyway, instantly the sound of the howling wind grew fainter as we found ourselves inside a companionway of some kind. It seemed like it was meant for the crew. It seemed more Spartan and function over form than what I'd seen from the rest of the ship. Nobody said a word as we made our way down until we came to another door. Will, being the first in line, reached out and opened it, and we stepped into what I can only describe as the most luxurious lounge I've ever been in. The walls were plastered with wood that reflected back in the glow of our lights. What appeared to be marble lined the ceilings overhead. I saw dozens of tables and chairs, ones that had been once scattered across the room, lying overturned or on their sides. No doubt thrown about by the storm. Walking further into the room, I turned to the left and aimed my flashlight at the wall. I nearly jumped out of my skin as my light reflected off a huge face that gazed back at me.
Jesus!
Feeling my heart begin a marathon in my chest.
What is it?
I heard Andrew call out. All the men ran to me and aimed their lights at what I'd seen. Instantly, the tension that filled the room was replaced by the sound of laughter.
Fucking hell, Nate. Are you really that afraid of the Queen of England?
Okay, now you're
redeemed. Redeemed.
It's like
redeemed.
Well, no, because these are American sailors on a British ship.
Are you that afraid of the Queen, Nate?
That, by the way, is like a like hand of God pull for you. That this becomes a British story after you completely made up the British part of it. Vinny, another one of our crew, asked as he fought for breath. I let out a shaky breath of my own as I played the light over what I now saw was a painting, one of Queen Elizabeth II. Then I began to laugh along with him.
Good Lord, Nathan, you really are a pussy.
For a minute, we all stood there, laughing and feeling the mood lighten somewhat. The levity helped lighten the sadness that we all felt. It was cut short by the captain's voice as a loud rumble of thunder came from outside.
All right, everyone. Change into dry clothes and break out the sleeping bags. Then get some sleep. This has been one of the worst days of our lives. We need to rest. Tomorrow, we'll take stock of the ship and figure out what to do next.
And with that, everyone began to fan out, finding a lone corner to change in without being seen. As I did, I approached the captain.
Gabe?
I said, tapping the man on the shoulder. He turned to look at me, and I instantly saw the haunted look in his eyes. The poor man blames himself for Kenny. I wanted to say something, say that it wasn't his fault. Instead, I told him I wanted to stay up a little, get the laptop out, and try and get a signal from the satellite connection, try and find a way to send out a call for help. After a moment's hesitation, he agreed, gesturing towards the vast amount of chairs and tables.
Go ahead, just try and get some sleep afterwards.
I nodded, patted him again on the shoulder before turning away. That's where I am now. Changed into dry clothes and found a thick, cushioned armchair on its side. Set it upright and pulled out the laptop. Battery was, thankfully, fully charged. I have a solar charger if it gets low, which survived. But, as I said at the start, it had to have sustained some kind of water damage because it won't let me go to many, if any, sites. Only this one. I'm the only one of us left awake now. All around me, I can hear the snores of my fellow crew members, hear them rolling over to get comfortable on the carpeted floors. I still hear the rain pounding on the roof of the great ship, hear the thunder rumble, and feel the ship lurching up and down in the waves. Pray she doesn't hit any rocks during the night. We don't need another problem on our hands. There is one final thing I have to say, though I can't help but feel foolish about it. I know that we're the only ones on board. Otherwise, people would have already come by now. We'd be swarmed with crew or passengers. And yet, I can't shake the feeling I'm being watched. I know it's ridiculous, but I can't make the feeling go away. I feel like a goldfish with its owner staring in at me, and I don't like it one bit. I even took a walk around outside this lounge to reassure myself nobody else is here. I know the captain wouldn't have liked me doing so, but I wouldn't have been able to sleep otherwise. If anyone reads this, can anyone help us? We're only fishermen who've dealt with a 70-foot-long liner, not a giant cruise ship or ocean liner. Does anyone know what we have to do to get power going again, where we have to go, if we can get power restored? We might be able to get the radio on board working again and let people know we're out here. And is there anything else important we should do tomorrow? Anything at all you can think of? Please let me know if anyone sees this. Check back in the morning, see if anyone has. Oh, and one final thing. I don't know if it'll help, but when I went for my walk to prove to myself no one else is here, I found a life ring, which had the name of the ship stamped into it. Maybe someone can look to see if the ship has been labeled missing or something, which would work to try and get someone to know where we are. The name of the ship bears the same name as a huge, almost creepy-looking painting on the wall that, in the dark, I try not to look at. The RMS Queen Elizabeth.
End of part 1.
I gotta say.
Go ahead and say
I like it.
What do you got to say?
I like it. I like this a lot.
Yeah, I do
Just
too.
Just the uniqueness of the premise. We were a fishing vessel that found this abandoned cruise ship, it looks like, but no one's on it, and like we don't know where we're at, and there's a storm, and I feel like there's some entity watching us. Just gotta say, like, I already have a soft spot for like ocean stories or nautical stuff, and this is checking every box I have for a story like this. It is so cool. I'm liking this a lot right now.
It's very nice.
That name,
I like that. It's also
name's
setting it up
familiar,
too, where I feel like it's setting up a paranormal angle, potentially ghost ship kind of thing. You even get some fun. You know, it could go any direction, which I think is fun. Paranormal, monster, you know, whatever. It could go in so many different directions, and I'm excited to keep unveiling the story.
I thought that name Queen Elizabeth was familiar. And I was like, what's that? So I look up RMS Queen Elizabeth. In 1972, while she was undergoing refurbishment in Hong Kong Harbor, a fire broke out aboard under unexplained circumstances, and the vessel was capsized by the water used to fight the fire. The following year, the wreck was deemed an obstruction to shipping in the area, and in 1974 and 75 was partially scrapped on site. Well,
well, that doesn't seem too good.
Well, that's not great. Just gotta say, being on that ship now, not a good thing, I would argue. Anyway, so yeah, they're on a ghost ship. So that's
They're
great.
on a ghost ship at the moment, right?
They're on a ghost ship with a giant skull in the clouds looking down on them.
Yeah.
Apparently,
It did give some Harry Potter vibes there for a moment. But you know,
yeah, you know what? I was thinking about that. I was like, there's a skull in the cloud, and there's the mention like before the wreck of the captain lighting a pipe. But I'm also having so much fun with like the tone of the story,
yeah, no,
like
it's great.
the ship and like, Captain, we're taking on water, whatever. That I'm willing to forgive it. I'm willing to look over it. Yeah, yeah. It's okay if it's a little cheesy. I mean, they're on a ghost ship in an ocean, right? So.
Yeah, no, I'm having a great time with it.
All right, so we are now on to part 2. Thank God. To say I'm relieved that the first post got through would be an understatement of massive proportions. Even though it seems like not many people saw it, the fact that anybody did is a blessing in itself. It gives me hope that all of us might make it out of this situation yet. First and foremost, to the people who did see it and commented, I can't thank you enough. Especially to the person who suggested a plan for what to do in regarding the power. It was actually thanks to you that I was able to give the captain and the others a suggestion of what to do today. Unfortunately, due to the fact we were so excited to get off the point of no return before she sank out from under us, we didn't bring the life raft with us. Only the supplies we thought we'd need. We were too caught up in the fact we had a better alternative to remember to lug it up the ladder. I do have to confess one thing to you all though. When I first woke up this morning and checked the comments you left, I thought people were either pulling my leg, thinking I was bullshitting you all, or that you had to be mistaken. After all, if the Queen Elizabeth caught fire and sank years, if not decades ago, how the hell could we be on board? Ghost ships, legitimate ones, only exist in horror films, not real life. There'd be a mistake made here. However, after some of the things that have happened today, I can't help but start to wonder if you're right. And if you are, we're in a whole lot bigger trouble than I thought we were. I'm jumping the gun though. I should tell you what went down today. When I first woke up, the first thing I realized was that the storm had passed. The rain no longer pounded on the roof of the ship, and it no longer twisted about in the swells. For a moment, it was so calm that I forgot where we were, what had happened yesterday. Then, everything came crashing back to me, causing me to sit up straight in my sleeping bag. The first thing I saw was the captain, who sat in one of the lounge chairs. He must have woken up a while ago. His head turned in my direction as I pulled myself out of the bag and to my feet, and he gave a short nod. Winding my way around the sleeping forms of the others, I made my way over to him.
How long you been up, Cap?
I whispered as I picked up another chair and set it beside him. He shrugged.
A little while now. Was planning on waking everyone up in about 20 minutes or so anyways.
I could still see that losing Kenny still weighed heavily on his shoulders. The man likely hadn't got much sleep due to it eating away at him. I decided to say something.
You know what happened wasn't your fault, Gabe. Kenny was above us. We couldn't have done anything to save him. It was just an accident.
For a moment, I saw his eyes harden and his mouth open as if to snap at me. Then he slumped into the chair, his body seeming to sag.
I appreciate you saying that, Nathan. More than you know. But a captain's job is to keep his crew safe. To get them home. And I didn't do that for Kenny. And I'm going to have to live with that.
I wanted to argue, but I saw that no amount of it would change his mind. Instead, I nodded and turned to look out across the massive room. We roused the others a few minutes later, and as they opened up the supplies we'd brought to bring out some food and water, the captain reminded me to check the laptop. Booting it up, I saw the battery was low, making a mental reminder to set the solar power charger in the sunlight outside to charge it back up. Then I checked the post it had made. Hope and excitement surged through me as I saw comments left below.
You guys, people saw what I wrote.
In seconds, I was surrounded as everyone crowded around me. A bottle of water and a granola bar were shoved into my hands as they read the comments you all had left. There was silence for a few moments. Then Spencer spoke up.
That can't be right.
He said softly. He looked up at us.
These people can't be right. right? There's no way the ship they're talking about is the same one we're on board.
Wyatt answered him.
No way, Spence. They either think we're playing with them or just spewing bullshit, or they're thinking of another ship. We're not in some early 2000s horror film.
I shot a look at the captain.
Cap, you're the oldest of us. Do you know if there was a ship called the Queen Elizabeth that did catch fire and sink?
He stayed quiet for a moment, seemingly lost in thought before answering.
There was a ship called the Queen Elizabeth that was built in the 1930s.
And it did catch fire and sink in Hong Kong harbor in the early 70s.
But no, there's no way this could be the same one.
There's no such things as ghost ships that manifest out of nothing.
He stood up, seeming to push away any remaining thoughts of the matter from his head.
We need to be getting onto a more realistic and pressing matters, though. We need to find a way to get power going. Without it, we have no way to operate the radio to send out a call for help.
I pointed out a particular comment that gave an idea of what to do. He leaned down, silently reading it before nodding.
That's our plan for the day.
He declared before splitting us up into two teams. One team, comprising of myself, Andrew, Spencer, and Will, would explore as much of the ship as we could, while the captain, Wyatt, and the only other remaining member of our crew, a tall, muscular Italian man named Virgne, would try and find their way down to the bowels of the ship to restore power. With the plan made, and a set of walkie-talkies given to the captain and me to maintain contact with each other, we exchanged a last good luck and stay safe, left the lounge. Flicking on our flashlights, the four of us slowly walked back through the hallway we'd taken to get inside. A moment later, we emerged into the bright light of day. The sun felt nice and warm on my face, and I couldn't help but let a small smile cross my face. Disappeared though, as my eyes looked out beyond the railing. The endless ocean surrounded us, stretching far beyond the horizon. No sign of land anywhere. A small shiver shot through me as the image of our ship slipping beneath the waves replayed in my mind, along with watching Kenny fall to his doom. I shook my head. Snap yourself out of it, Nate. Keep focused. I pulled the solar charger from my pocket and set it down next to the open hatch. Pick it up later when we came back this way. Andrew spoke up, pointing to the row of lifeboats that hung from davits that spread out away from us.
You think those would still be safe to use?
I shrugged my shoulders.
I don't see why not. But I wouldn't want to try and use one of those to get back to shore.
I pushed the hair out of my eyes and pushed my glasses up my nose.
All right, let's keep moving, guys.
For the next few hours, the four of us explored both the inside and outside of the ship, occasionally stopping to radio our position back to the captain. The Queen Elizabeth was indeed a luxury ship in every sense of the word. The wood on the outside decks was well varnished, teaked, shining brilliantly in the sunlight. The same was true for the miles of wood that plastered the walls of the carpeted hallways and rooms that crisscrossed the inside like a maze. I was almost in awe of how beautiful it was. However, there was one thing that surprised me, and I wasn't the only one to notice. As we walked through another lounge, Will said the words that incessantly reverberated in my head.
Anyone else notice we haven't seen a single TV on board yet?
Andrew shrugged his shoulders.
Hey, who knows? Maybe they took all the TVs off the walls for renovations or something. Or maybe it's one of those ships that deliberately doesn't have any in order to keep the passengers from not taking part in the activities.
His words reassured me a little, but I still couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable. The entire time we'd been exploring the ship, an indescribable feeling had followed me like an annoying dog. And to make matters worse, the feeling of being watched I'd had last night hadn't gone away. Every so often, I would shoot a look behind us as we had walked, aiming my light back the way we'd come. I saw nothing, but for whatever reason, it felt like something had been there, and pulled back just out of sight every single time I'd look. As we entered what, according to the sign above the door, was the first-class smoking room, the radio on my belt chirped. There's a layer of static above everything due to the massive amount of steel and wood in the way, but the words of the captain were unmistakable.
Nathan, we finally reached the engine room. We also found the power source.
I heard a small trace of surprise in the man's voice as he continued.
You're not going to believe this, but the ship is powered by what appears to be Yarrow boilers. I haven't seen these things on a ship since I was a young man in the Navy.
Spencer's face scrunched up in confusion.
What in the hell was a Yarrow boiler?
I shrugged my shoulders, then hit the transmit button.
Can you get the power going?
There's another wave of static before he answered.
It'll take a little while, but yes. We'll be able to get power back to the ship. Just give us about 20 minutes or so. Half an hour at most. It's been a while since I've had to fire one of these behemoth subs. And there are 12 of them down here.
And with that, he clicked off.
Well, now what do we do in the meantime?
Will asked. Spencer began to answer him.
I remember seeing on a map on the wall that there's a first-class gym on this deck. The four of us could go and lift some weights until they get everything going. Or, if we fancy a swim, there's a swim pool as well. Or hell, we could even...
He kept speaking, but I'd stopped listening to him. The feeling of being watched had returned, this time with a vengeance that caused a cascade of shivers to shoot up my spine. For a moment, I resisted the urge to look around. Then I cast my eyes towards a set of windows to the outside, where someone peered in at us. On the outside of a cruise ship? Oh, man.
Yeah, who's staying on the ship, you know?
Well, I mean, it's he's looking outside, so it would be on the side of the ship, right?
Well, I assume that he's probably like on a deck looking in, is what I would assume.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah. I only caught a glimpse of the figure for a moment before they realized they'd been spotted and yanked their head back out of sight. But it was enough to see what looked like a small boy or young teenager.
Hey!
I shouted out, rushing over to the window. It didn't open, but I was able to crane my neck enough to look around the corner. The deck was empty in all directions, but I knew I hadn't seen things. There had been someone there.
Hey, guys! Did any of you see that?
There's no answer from behind me. I could imagine them looking at me like I just grown two heads. They probably think I'm nuts.
Seriously, I'm not kidding. I saw someone out there.
They still didn't respond. I felt a slight pang of irritation flow through me and turned back, beginning to speak.
Guys, don't be assholes. I'm asking you.
The smoking room was empty. My voice died in my throat, and I felt a wave of confusion wash over me. What the hell? I looked around, my eyes wandering to the ornate wooden bar that lined the back of the room. There was no movement over there either.
What the hell? Did they freaking leave?
I breathed out incredulously. The irritation I'd felt a moment ago reared its head again, and I strode to the open doors to the hallway.
Hey, assholes! What the hell's the matter with you? We're not supposed to split up!
My voice echoed away into the gloom, bouncing off the wooden walls and dying away. But nobody answered. A thought suddenly entered my mind. Oh, this better not be a prank. This is not the time or place for that shit. I knew that the three men left to play practical jokes on themselves and the rest of the crew, but I would have thought they'd known better than to pull them with this predicament. I let out a deep sigh and began to walk down the hall, my footsteps muted by the carpeted floor.
If this is a joke, I'll fucking wring your necks.
I muttered, reaching a T-junction and shining my light down it. Empty, empty and silent. Kept going straight, passing by a sign showing the direction of the gym and movie theater. I remembered hearing Spencer talk about it and quickened my pace. I expected the sound of their voice to slowly begin filtering down to me. But as I approached the door to it, I still heard nothing. And when I shone the light inside, reflecting off rowing machines, stationary bikes, and other exercise equipment I didn't recognize, my exasperation grew.
Know what? Screw this.
I said through gritted teeth, snatching the walkie-talkie from my belt and thumbing it.
Hey, Captain, you're not gonna like this, but the others quite literally abandoned me and ran off to God only knows where. I'm trying to find them, but they've completely fucked off. Any advice on what I should do? Over.
A wall of static greeted me as I let go of the transmit button. Nobody answered. I hit the button again.
Captain, do you read me? I'm alone. The others have run off. Over.
More static. I began to fiddle with the dials, changing channels. Interference, stupid piece of shit. I hit the button again.
Hello? Does anybody read me? Over.
The static suddenly stopped. The hallway went silent, a silence I've never experienced before, one that seemed to be alive, if that makes any sense. Then, a voice suddenly tumbled from the walkie-talkie speaker.
Hello, Nathan.
My eyes shot down to the radio in my hand, my breath catching in my throat. It felt like someone had just poured a bucket of ice water down my back. That wasn't the captain's voice. That wasn't any of the crew's voice. For a moment, I debated saying nothing, and I slowly pressed down the transmit button. My throat had gone as dry as cotton.
Hello?
My voice coming out gaspy and ragged. For a few seconds, there was no reply, and then came the voice again. A man's voice, deep and low.
Welcome aboard to all of you.
My heart began to thump hard in my chest, and my breathing quickened.
What the actual fuck, man?
I forced myself to hit the button again, forced my voice to come out much calmer than I felt.
Who the hell are you?
There's another stretch of silence, in which I began to furiously look over my shoulders, the feeling of paranoia growing by the second, and then my blood turned to ice as a new sound emanated from the radio speaker. Sound of the man beginning to laugh. Another laugh joined the first, this time a woman. I stared at the radio as if it were possessed as more and more people's laughter began to filter out of it. It sounded as if an entire room full of people had just found what I'd said the most hilarious thing they'd ever heard. Fear began to fill every fiber of my being. A new kind of fear different than the one I'd felt in the storm last night. And then it climaxed as a horrifying scream. One that sounded like a woman being brutally murdered tore from the speaker. I practically flung the walkie-talkie out of my hand to the floor, clapping a hand over my mouth as I backed up into the wall. As soon as the scream finished, the radio went silent. Dead. For a few moments I stood there, hands still clapped over my mouth and staring at the radio like it was about to sprout legs and chase me. I fought to get my racing heart, shuddering, breathing under control. The logical part of my mind trying to make sense of things. You're panicking, Nathan. You're panicking, and you're panicking so much that you're beginning to experience auditory hallucinations. When the mind breaks, it conjures up things that aren't there. What you need to do is get outside into the fresh air. The fresh air will do you good. I took a deep breath, feeling myself beginning to calm down. The fear I'd felt began to melt away like ice in spring. I shook my head.
Yeah, you're supposed to be the calm and rational type, Rogers.
I whispered to myself. I let out a soft laugh and took a step towards my dropped radio. But I stopped as I felt my foot step on something. Something that wasn't the carpet. Looked down at the floor. There, crushed under my foot, was what appeared to be a folder of some sort. No, not a folder. I crouched down, aiming my light as I picked the object up. There was artwork on the cover. I could see a violin, a film reel, shuffleboard, and other items decorating the cover. Big blocky black letters in the middle of the cover read, "Program for today." And in the bottom right-hand corner was the word Cunard in cursive scrawl. I looked at the cover as I walked over and picked the radio up, clipping it back to my belt. Focusing my attention on it was helping me rapidly calm, and I decided to quickly flip it open and see what it said. There were only 2 pages inside. The top of the left page was adorned with the word Notices, while the right page was headlined by Program of Events. My eyes began to slide down them, silently reading it out, until my mind caught up with my eyes. Wait, I didn't just see that, did I? I flashed the light back up to the top right of the page, where the date was stamped. Thursday, June 21st, 1956.
What?
I blinked my eye a couple times, silently praying that the date would change. I was seeing things, but no, it remained the same. I began to feel my heart pound in my chest again.
This makes no fucking sense, man.
For a moment, my mind flashed back to the comment I'd seen that morning, about the ship having sunk decades ago. I shook my head, tried to stay calm. Oh, just get the hell outside, Nathan. Taking a breath, I turned to head back in the direction of the smoking room, and froze. The program fell from my hand to the floor, my heart thundered in my chest, and my breathing came in short, ragged gasps. There were figures standing in the hallway down by the T-junction. I couldn't tell how many, but there were enough that they blocked the way back. In the gloom, I couldn't see any features, just the dark outlines of them. Remembering the flashlight in my hands, I began to raise it to aim at them. That's when the light flickered out. I was plunged into gloom as I stared down at the light, smacking it and mentally pleading for it to come back to life, but it was no use. The light was dead. Realization suddenly filled me as my mind screamed at me that I'd taken my eyes away from the figures. When I snapped my head up, I almost screamed. They had drawn closer, packing the hallway from wall to wall. They made no noise at first, and then I heard the whispering begin. It started quietly, almost to the point I thought I was hearing things, but then it began to grow louder. I couldn't tell what was being said. The voices were so low it was impossible to distinguish individual words. Even so, I felt a new bolt of terror shoot through me at the sound, and then my fear compounded as I saw the figures take a step towards me. I began to violently shake as I slowly began to back away. Then they came for me. The figures were suddenly a blur of motion, moving far faster than any human being could. They streamed towards me, the whispering suddenly intensifying to a fever pitch. Caught off guard, I stumbled backwards, tripping over my own feet and falling to the floor. My right elbow slammed into the wood paneling, and I felt a bolt of pain shoot up my arm. The figures swarmed over me, the whispering morphing into laughter, and screaming. A moment later, more screaming began, my screams. I raised my arms over my head, covering my face and curling into a ball. Tears began rolling down my face, and I felt at any moment I'd be torn apart.
Nathan!
The shout cut through the silence? I stopped screaming but kept my arms over my head protectively. Then I felt a hand begin to roughly shake me. The terror returned and I lashed out.
Get the fuck off me!
The voice came again, a familiar voice.
Hey, easy, bro, easy!
The realization made me lower my arms and open my eyes. 3 faces, etched with panic and fear, looked down at me. For a second, I fought to find my voice.
Andrew, Will, Spence?
Relief crossed the faces of my crewmates.
He's back!
Andrew said quietly, wiping visible sweat from his brow. I uncurled myself and sat up, looking around. I was lying on the floor of the smoking room. Close to the windows, I'd seen the figure outside. Sunlight still streamed in, landing on where I'd collapsed to the floor. Looked up at the others.
What the hell happened?
Spencer shook his head, still looking rattled, but Andrew again answered me.
Dude, I have no fucking idea. One minute you were talking about going to check out the other areas of the ship. The next you suddenly yelled and ran to the window. Then you just started pulling a statue routine. You didn't respond to anything we said. You just stared at the ocean, not moving and not blinking, until you suddenly fell to the floor and began screaming.
Thank you, my love.
Let out a shaky breath of his own.
You scared the ever-living shit out of us.
I blinked rapidly, my mind trying to make sense of his words. Had I really hallucinated everything? Had it all just been in my head? I stumbled to my feet.
Professional
aided by Will
streamer.
and Spencer. Andrew just kept looking at me, concerned look on his face. I took a deep breath of my own.
I'm okay.
My voice sounded far calmer and surer than I felt.
You sure?
I nodded.
I must have gotten less sleep last night than I thought. The stress and the sleep must have made me, I don't know, fall asleep standing up or something?
I could see the other two relax immediately, taking my words at face value, but Andrew continued to look at me for a moment, seemingly unconvinced. Finally, he nodded. The sound of static stabbed through the air, causing me to almost jump out of my skin. Then the sound of the captain's voice rang over the radio on my belt.
We're in business, boys.
I heard him declare happily. A moment later, I felt the floor beneath my feet shudder slightly from what must have been the boilers coming to life. And then the lights came on,
Oh,
all
that's
throughout the
cute.
ship. The smoking room became ablaze with the yellow light of what had been the incandescent bulbs, banishing away the gloom that lurked in the corners like monsters in the closet. I began to say something to the others when a new sound began. Music. Music began spilling out from what had been the hidden speakers in the walls or ceiling. It echoed all throughout the deck. I could hear the instruments, along with the woman's crooning voice reverberating far down the hallway, and likely all throughout the ship as well. Spencer looked up the walls.
Man, that's one hell of an old song.
Isn't that
Andrew
cute?
nodded, still looking hard at me. Will suddenly snapped his fingers.
I know this song. My grandmother used to play it all the time when I was a little kid.
He began snapping his fingers again, thinking hard.
It's by a singer from the 40s and 50s called, I think, Joe Stafford.
Now Andrew did take his eyes off me, looking over at him.
What's the song's name?
He asked, mildly interested. Will thought for another moment before answering.
You Belong to Me.
As if on cue, the singing voices sang out the 4 words. Couldn't help but shiver slightly at them, still feeling as if I jumped through from Kansas to Oz and then been booted back to reality. Cleared my throat.
Hey guys, would you mind not telling the captain about what happened with me?
They looked at me for a moment, thinking.
Yeah, sure, Nate. As long as you don't ever do that again.
Feeling relieved, I nodded. Spencer spoke up.
Come on, we should try and meet back up with the captain. Figure out what to do next.
With that, he walked out of the room, Will following close after him. Andrew shot me one more look.
Sure you're all right?
I nodded.
Yeah, I'm fine.
I lied. I raised my right arm to rub the back of my neck as he began to leave the room. But I stopped as a throbbing pain suddenly shot up my arm. I let out a small gasp of pain, bringing my left hand over to feel the back. As soon as my fingers touched my right elbow, another sear of pain rippled out. I turned and looked at where I'd fallen. There was nothing there for me to have slammed my elbow into, and the carpet had been thick and plush, too plush to have hurt myself. The mental image of falling back in the hallway suddenly burst forth in my mind, falling as those figures rushed towards me, whispering and laughing and screaming. My eyes slowly rose to look down the now brightly lit hallway. Even from where I could see the sign showing the location of the gym, I shuddered. It was just a hallucination, wasn't it? I swallowed hard, forcing the thought from my head, and hurried to catch up to the others. We met the captain and the others back in the lounge we'd spent the night in. They found a way to turn the music off, and for that I was thankful. All we'd heard as we walked through the ship had been songs that sounded like they were 70 years ago or older. All they did was remind me of the program I'd clutched in my hand, seeing the date on it. We could tell they must have been breaking their backs to get the boilers going. Sweat and black stains covered their faces and clothes. The captain glanced down at his watch.
We have only about an hour or so daylight left. Let's try and make our way to the radio room to see if we can send out a distress call. After that, we'll figure out where to go from there.
We all nodded and hurried after the man as he led the way. The room wasn't hard to find at all. Once we'd entered the upper levels of the ship, ones I could tell were meant for crew only, signs led us right to it. My hopes of being able to get off rose with each step we took, and then were dashed as we reached the closed door to it. The captain reached out and attempted to turn the handle, but it refused to turn. A few of us gathered up next to him and attempted to force it to open, but it wouldn't budge a single inch.
Damn it! It's locked.
Captain growled as he finally gave up. Felt my heart sink. See
15
the same expression
cents.
everyone else's
Big money.
face. But then the captain continued.
Okay. That means there's got to be a set of keys somewhere on board that can get us in there.
He rapped on the metal door with his knuckles.
So our next job is to find them. They'll likely be in the crew's sleeping quarters, maybe in the captain's cabin.
He looked at his watch again.
But that'll be a job for tomorrow. We should head back to the lounge, get some food and water on our systems, and get some sleep. We've done a good job today. And finding our way through the ship now that she has power is going to be much easier.
I felt equal parts dismay and anxiety as I followed the others back to the lounge. And as much as I tried to ignore it, I still felt watched. The lights didn't help one bit. I kept looking back over my shoulder, afraid I would see the boy I'd seen in the smoking room window again. Or worse, the shadowy figures. Thankfully, though, I never did. And we made it uneventfully back to the lounge where we ate our dinner, packages of MREs that had been part of our emergency supplies, and then began to settle down for the night. I used the solar charger I'd left outside all day to charge the laptop. As I booted it up, Will came over to me.
You truly all right, man?
Quietly asked me. I nodded at him, giving him a false smile. He sighed.
You know, as much of a fucked up situation as we're in, the only good part was hearing that song again. I haven't heard it since my grandmother passed away.
I looked up at him.
You like that kind of music? Honestly, I like everything about that time period. The 1950s, I mean. I like the music, the movies, the celebrities, the cars. Between you and me, bro, I like it a hell of a lot more than the 21st century. If they invented time travel in my lifetime, I'd go back there in a heartbeat and never come back.
He let out a soft laugh and patted me on the shoulder and walked away to his sleeping bag. I watched him go, then looked over at the captain, gazed around at everyone, looked over at me, and I started slightly. I saw something in his eyes that I wasn't used to seeing. Worry. Worry and fear. Did he see something down in the engine room? Also, but my prediction, by the way, is what was that guy's name who just got Will? Will 100% is going to get like sucked into the the 1950s time loop after that
it's
quote.
definitely
There's
gonna
no
be,
way. Yeah,
Monkey Paul's wish.
he is going to the abyss. He's going to the time prison on the ship. Just as quickly, it washed away, and he nodded at me. I returned the gesture, and he pointed at the laptop in my lap. It was an unspoken question. Are you going to try sending a message out again? I nodded, and he stood up, stretching his arms over his head and yawning before shaking his head slightly and heading for his own sleeping bag. And now, here I am, the only one left awake again. The captain turned out most of the lights in the lounge, something I really did not like, so I moved over to a table that remained upright, one that had a lamp
I
built
can't even
into
get
the
this
middle of
fucking
it,
pack
turned
open.
it on. I now
Boom.
sit here typing this out,
That was
but
nasty.
I can't help but look up. my eyes
Absolutely
darting around
nasty.
The dark, expansive room. I'm terrified every
Look
time
at
I
that
take
cute
my eyes off
little
the
flying
screen.
piranha.
I'll see those figures again.
Fish insect.
I standing in the dark and staring at me. I wish so much that we could just jump into one of the lifeboats on the side of the ship, lower it into the sea, and row away from this godforsaken place as fast as we could.
Friendly
But with only
Teddy.
about a week and a
When
half
Friendly
till we
Teddy
finish
dies, each player
Plus,
draws a
no
card.
idea where we are. We could
Well,
end
what
up
a
rowing
friendly
directly
guy.
into the middle of the Atlantic if we're not there already. Like I said at the start, when I first started this day, I felt for sure you all had to be wrong. That just because this ship was named Queen Elizabeth,
Excuse
it
me.
didn't mean it
That's
was the
kinda
same
wild.
one that caught fire and sank long ago. But after what I saw in that hallway, both the program from 1956 and those things that I truly don't know whether I hallucinated or
Poltergeist.
not, I'm starting to believe you might be right.
Orphans of the Wheat.
As much as my logical mind tries to tell me it's impossible,
Ghostly Key
I think we might have
Bearer.
jumped out of the frying pan of our
Demonic
sinking ship
Council.
and into the literal fire. And honestly, I'm beyond terrified. I have no idea how I'm going to sleep
Friendly
tonight.
Ghost.
I think in the morning I'll see about getting myself some kind of weapon. A chair leg, a knife, something. May not do anything against any kind of ghost, but it might make me feel better, at least. Please, if you're still there, if you end up reading this, please let me know what we should do tomorrow. Should
The
we try and
$2
find the
card?
keys to the radio room like the captain suggested? Should we do something else? Is there anything that I might be missing here? Does anyone know
Fitting
anything more about
name.
the Queen Elizabeth? Anything that might give me a clue as to why this is happening or just to direct us to any important places? Anything you can think of might help us. God knows, right now, we need all the help we can get.
End of part 2. You know, I like that it's going this paranormal route. Like a ghost ship.
Yeah.
In theory, I feel like a ghost ship from a forgotten past sounds kind of corny, but it's working really well here. I think also
They
just
play it
showing
well,
that each
yeah.
person kind of goes into their own hell when they basically experience these phenomenons, these like ghosts almost, right? So it seems like Nathan, our main character, he experienced it, and so did Captain. Is what I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's it is a theoretically corny idea, but it's played in such a way
He's
here
still
where it's
being
like more personal
Mercedes.
torment, and like I think I'm just so in love with the setting that I'm willing to like look over any any other
I think
issues with it. I'm like, yep,
I think the setting is fun, but I think what's important here that makes this story not go into a super cheesy or like corny area is that it's good characters. If you don't have good characters in your story that you care about, no one's going to give a fuck. So you can, if your characters, if you have likable characters, then that's all you need to really have to make a compelling story, to make it more emotionally tied in. And right now, I like all the guys. Like, I think all of the characters seem to be, I don't know, just well crafted. I like Nathan and Gabe or Captain a lot. So
yeah, every time you quote him, I imagine Captain Price from Call of Duty. That's how he sounds in my head.
yeah.
But then I like the idea of like Andrew being like kind of skeptical of him and stuff like that. Like it's playing it pretty well so far.
On to part 3.
The only phrase I know how to describe our current situation right now is up shit creek without a paddle. Things have gone from bad to far, far worse since last night. And to tell the truth, everyone now is scared out of their damn minds. Well, almost everyone, but I'll get to that in a minute. Before I say anything, let me again say thank you to those of you who commented on last night's post. Despite everything that happened today, we managed to make some progress, and I can't help but think it was thanks to you all giving us some direction. Let me quickly answer a few things that you have brought up. First and foremost, as soon as I opened the laptop and saw the comment, I went and pulled one of the maps of the ship off the wall, looking to see if there's indeed any sort of chapel or religious gathering areas for us to hole up in. Unfortunately, the Queen Elizabeth seems to never have had one built aboard her, so that idea is out. Secondly, the reason why we set up base camp in the lounge is because it was
The
first
Mindseeker
place we
can't be
reached when we
blocked
came
if a
aboard.
source you
It's the
control
place
would
we
deal
know
damage
best.
to an
After
opponent.
yesterday, though,
Prevent that
specifically
damage,
with
and
our
each
current
opponent
predicament,
mills that many
I'm beginning to
cards.
think moving to one
Holy
or two adjoining
shit.
cabins might be a better idea. Not as much room for anyone
That's
or anything
interesting.
to creep on us. That being said,
The
let me tell you
Mind
what happened
Skinner?
today. We were aroused by the captain just after 10 in the morning.
Come on, Nate.
He said softly to me, shaking my shoulder.
We've got work to do today.
Then he moved away to wake the others. For another minute, I simply lay there, staring up at the ornate ceiling high above our heads.
Interesting.
Horrible mental images of the shadowy figures had followed me into my nightmares, and I dreamed of running down dark and seemingly endless hallways,
Huh.
the figures always just a step behind
This
me.
goofy guy.
I shivered slightly as I remembered the voice welcoming me, welcoming all of us aboard. I attempted to force the image out of my head as I pulled myself from the sleeping bag into my feet. Once everyone was awake, we all quickly had breakfast before I broke out the computer to see what people had said. I quickly scrolled down to the comments I saw were there as the others came over. As much as I wanted to tell the others about what I'd seen yesterday, a small part of me whispered that none of them would believe me. Especially after what Andrew, Spencer, and Will said they saw happen to me. If anything similar happens to me or anyone else, I'll tell them, but not until then. Everyone gathered around to read what you all suggested. I could tell to them it was like a lighthouse beacon, helping guide them to safety. I couldn't
Pretty
help but feel
adorable.
a small pang of disappointment flow through me as they again dismissed the ghost ship comments, even though I'd known it was coming. Apart from potentially the captain to me, nobody else had seen anything out of the ordinary. Shot a glance his way as he leaned in to read the screen, but any trace of fear I'd seen last night had been wiped away, replaced by his usual calm, calculated expression.
Well, at least people seem to agree with my idea to find the keys.
He said finally, standing back up and seeming somewhat pleased. Wyatt leaned in and pointed at another comment.
Cap, what about this person's suggestion to move from the lounge to some of the cabins to sleep? It'd be a hell of a lot more comfortable than than another night on the floor.
The captain rubbed his beard, thinking.
They may have a point. I wasn't able to get much sleep last night. We'll move our stuff into some of the first-class cabins.
Just as the same as yesterday, we were paired off into two teams. The captain, Andrew, and Spencer would head off to the crew quarters to try and find the keys, while myself, Wyatt, Will, and Vinny would try to find any food we could add to our slowly dwindling supplies. I very much didn't want us splitting up again, not after both what you all had said and what I'd experienced, but try as I might to say so to the captain, he remained steadfast.
We need to cover as much ground as possible, Nate.
He said after we dumped our stuff into some adjoining cabins near the lounge, and with that, he
I'm
turned
sure it's
and hustled the
overkill
others to
leaving
go
every
and
single one of
escort
these
away.
cards,
I
but
watched them go, saying a
I
silent
mean,
prayer for them to be safe before turning to
why
the
not
others.
take care of all of your
Well-
cards, you know?
Which way do we go?
Vinny asked, gesturing to the many hallways that branched away from us. I looked down and studied the map of the ship for a moment. My eyes drifted past the maze of rooms and lounging areas before settling on a large area near the stern of the ship.
How about
I've
we
been
start
getting a
here?
lot of these
What
unsettling
looks like a
twins.
restaurant called the Veranda Grill?
The three men craned to look at the map.
Sure, why not?
Wyatt said, shrugging his shoulders. With our destination set, we turned and began heading aft. Passing through the lounge, we found ourselves in more
Well,
hallways
that's
that
kinda
seemed
cool.
to stretch on forever.
Unwanted remake.
They had a
Destroy
lot of
target
cabins
creature. Its
just in
controller
first class
manifests
alone.
dread.
Vinny said as we passed a small sitting area looking out onto the starboard side of the ship. Then he lowered his voice slightly.
Hey, did any of you have anything weird happen to you yesterday?
Question caused me to stop dead in my tracks.
What do you mean, weird?
Everyone stopped now. Wyatt let out a soft groan.
Oh, come on, Vin. Nothing weird happened yesterday. The captain said so.
But I could tell he wasn't being completely honest. Will's brow furrowed.
What are you guys talking about?
Took a step towards Vinny.
The mythic rare?
Something happened to you guys down there in the engine room.
Wyatt let out another protest.
Is that
but
two
Vinny
mythic
seemed to
rares?
ignore him.
I don't know, man. All I know is we were down there
working like crazy to get the boilers up and running. When I looked over at Captain, he stopped in the middle of giving us directions. I had no idea what to do next.
Saw the big man shiver slightly before continuing.
He had the creepiest expression on his face. It was like he'd been hypnotized or something. The lights were on, but no one was home. Then he just snapped out of it. He looked absolutely terrified for half a second. Then seemed to remember what was happening and
So
kept
that's worth a
going.
few dollars.
Wyatt cut in.
That's because he didn't get much sleep last night. He literally told us that when you asked him what
Mirror
was up.
room.
I swear to God, Vinny, you're making a mountain out of a molehill with this dude.
Vinny shot a slightly irritated stare at him before turning back to Will and me.
I just need to know, did any of you have anything weird or unusual happen to you guys yesterday?
I exchanged a glance with Will.
Also worth a few
His
bucks.
expression was
Very
that
cool.
of a perfect poker face, but the look in his eyes betrayed what raced behind them. For a moment, neither of us said anything. I debated whether to come clean about my experience, but Will spoke before I did.
No, nothing like that. Nothing besides accidentally tripping over an overturned chair.
Yeah, that's
Looks like a
they shouldn't
prototype
do
from
that.
Poppy
That's a horrible idea.
Playtime.
Well, I thought that he was already
There's-
going to say that. He's like, if anybody brings it up, I'll tell them. I wonder why he just didn't outright say, yeah, it happened to me too.
He should be like, no, this is a thing that happened. We don't know what's going on. We need to have all the cards on the table. This is not time for whatever this is. Yeah, absolutely not. I felt a wave of surprise shoot through me. The entire time I'd known Will, I'd never known him to deliberately lie. He was someone who always told the truth, even if it ended bad for him. Where the hell did this side of him come from?
There, see? All is as well as it can be.
Wyatt said triumphantly.
Happy now, Vin?
I saw him study our faces for another moment before shrugging.
All right. Guess it really was nothing.
And with that, he turned and began walking down the hall again. I spared another glance at Will, but he simply shrugged at me and turned to follow them. I stared after him for a moment, unable to move, until a familiar shiver shot up my spine, one that indicated I was being watched. I swung my head around, looking behind me back down the hallway. Nobody was there. Nobody I could see, anyway. Till another shiver passed through me, I turned and jogged to catch up to the others. We found a set of stairs that, according to the sign next to them, led down to the restaurant deck from where we were on the main deck. Heading down a few flights, we found ourselves on yet another landing. Will suddenly let out a small laugh and pointed.
Hey, guys, check it out.
Across the landing from us was what looked like a small booth. Glass and metal bars separated the person who sat inside from everyone outside. Looking up, I saw a sign hanging over the window. Purser's office.
That must be where you drop off any paperwork you need to travel aboard, along with valuables you want locked in the ship's safe.
Wyatt said. He let out a laugh.
You think there's anything valuable still in there? Jewelry, cash, shit like that?
I turned to him, feeling a bit astonished.
You're joking, right? Hey, we're alone aboard on here. If you took anything, I don't think anyone would know.
He said, grinning slightly.
Yeah, until the ship gets brought back to dock and the owners discover shit missing from their dumbass.
Vinny said in a displeased tone. Now it was Wyatt's turn to give him an irritated look.
He's just kidding, jeez.
He looked down at the floor.
Killjoy.
For my part, I gave him a long look, then looked over at the purser's office again. I don't think it'd be anyone on land who'd be pissed if we stole anything, I thought. Before anyone else could say anything, the radio let out a squawk. My heart momentarily began to thud in my chest. For a moment, I was terrified I'd hear the man's voice from it again. Instead, the elated voice of the captain came.
Nate, we found the keys. They're hidden away in the desk in the captain's cabin.
A feeling of relief washed over me, and I pulled the walkie-talkie from my belt and thumbed it as I saw relieved smiles cross the others' faces.
That's terrific, Cap. You want us to head straight to the radio room?
The man spoke again, a sharp burst of static masking his voice.
Say again?
Now the man's voice came in loud and clear.
Negative, Nathan. We might still need some supplies. We don't know how long it'll take for anyone to reach us, but we're going to begin running low on food soon. Go check out the restaurants like you were planning, and then come meet us.
Wyatt's face fell at his words, but I saw the other two nod at me.
Roger that, Cap. We'll try and be quick as we can. Over and out.
And with that, I clicked off.
Come on, guys. This way.
I said, pointing to a sign at the start of the left hallway. Veranda Grill, this way.
$5 or $6
Before us, made
card.
our way down the hallway. A porthole stood open halfway down it. As I
Supposedly.
passed it, the smell of the ocean filtered in. I slowed to take a deep breath of it.
Enduring
let it evaporate
curiosity.
a bit, and froze. I didn't just see that. I did not just see that, but I knew I had. As we passed the porthole, I'd shot a glance out, hoping to catch a quick glimpse of the relatively calm waters, and I'd caught a split-second glimpse of someone walking
You love
past
this
it.
one?
It had been too quick to see anything besides a blur, but it had been enough.
Kitty.
I felt the fear of yesterday return. Oh shit, not again, man. My heart raced in my chest and I felt a lump in my throat.
Hey, you all right, Nate?
The voice snapped me back, and I looked up to see the others had turned to look at me. All of them were
$6
confused
on
expressions on their
TCG?
faces. I fought to find my voice for a second, then spoke, trying to sound calm.
That's $11 between
Yeah,
these two cards.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys.
Will cocked his head at me, giving me an odd look, but didn't say anything. Fusing the urge to look out the porthole again, I started walking, pushing past them to begin leading the way.
What do you say,
Come on.
George?
Let's go get this over with.
You say,
For a
Bubba?
moment, I heard nothing behind me, and then I heard the others follow.
Oh.
Holy freaking shitballs!
Wyatt breathed out.
That's... wow.
We stood at the entrance to the restaurant next to a small sign that read, "Please wait here to be seated." For my part, I couldn't blame him for such a reaction, even after what just happened. I
Oh,
couldn't
mommy's
help
not
but feel
sharing
an awe of
food.
the expansive room in front of us. Like the rest of the ship, wooden paneling covered
Mommy's
the
being
walls. The only difference
greedy.
was that in here, squares
Daddy
of
gave you
tiles of
cheese
aquamarine
earlier.
had been indented into them. Some had ornate shapes, and across the room, I saw a massive
Mean
painting
ol'
or stitching of what
mommy.
appeared to be a woman clad in ancient Greek or Roman clothing. Below her, 4 horses reared up as if to charge, while several men seemed to hold everything up in the midair.
I almost put that card in
Tables
upside
with
down
expensive-looking tablecloths littered the
because
room,
he's hanging
with the
upside
sea
down.
green upholstered chairs around them, almost inviting people to come and sit in them. Shooting a glance to my right, I saw a huge grand piano set against the far wall and a huge aquamarine curtain covering what must be a window to the stern deck.
I
Yeah,
don't
that
even
food
want to
is
imagine what
delicious.
it must have cost to eat in here.
Vinny said, causing everyone to laugh softly.
You're not joking.
The girls
I
need to
replied,
cook
then
for us
pointed
more
across the
often.
room at a metal swinging door.
Did
Look,
Katie make
there's
that
a
or
door in the
Elena?
kitchen.
Winding our way through the sea of tables and chairs, we reached the door and stopped in front of it. I turned back to the others.
All right. Cross your fingers we find something, guys.
Taking a deep breath, I put my hand to the metal and pushed. We found ourselves
Elena
in a
made it?
huge industrial kitchen. Pots and pans of
Pretty
all
damn
kinds hung from hooks on
good.
the ceiling, and multiple stoves stretched away on the far
What kind of
wall.
meat in that is?
Being
Is
that we
that
began to
sausage
explore the
or
room, opening cabinets and drawers?
we could probably do it
Oh,
with
looks like
turkey?
flour here.
Benny called, holding up a large white bag. Well, that's something, at least. Continuing on, we pulled out more than a few ingredients, but nothing we could immediately eat. It got worse when we opened a giant fridge and saw nothing but items like butter and milk inside.
Damn it.
Wyatt suddenly yelled, slamming the fridge closed with a slam. He leaned back against the door, leaning his head back. Benny spoke softly.
Look, man, if they were at port when the storm ripped her away, it stands to reason there might not have been much in the restaurants. We still have the holds and the meat lockers to go through. At least we found some things.
Wyatt's
Oh,
eyes
she doesn't do
snapped
pork?
open and he glared at the man.
Oh, yeah?
Forgot that.
That's always just like you, Vin. You've always got to try and cheer people up when you're not talking shit about things that have no merit.
I realized the situation must have been eating heavily at him, and it was finally bursting out. Benny narrowed his eyes and took a step towards him, clenching his fist.
Hey, fuck you, man. At least I'm not the dumbass who thinks about robbing a ship when we should be searching for food.
The two of them began to shout at each other, their voices filling up the room and bouncing off the metal walls. I shot a glance at Will, who wore a helpless expression on his face. Finally, it got to the point where I couldn't take it anymore.
Shut up, both of you!
I screamed out the top of my lungs, feeling my own anger flare up at their petty squabbling.
Veteran survivor.
I stood there, breathing in deeply as the two went dead silent, turning to look at me with slightly
Another
astonished looks on their
disturbing
faces.
mirth.
I'm not someone who yells.
Another
often.
haunted
Usually I'm
screen.
quiet and calm. When I yell, people
Split
take
up. That's
notice.
some cool art.
For a few moments, there was nothing but silence in the kitchen as we all stared at each other. Looks of shame and guilt felt over Wyatt.
Choose
and
one.
Vinny's
Destroy
faces,
all tapped
and I saw them
creatures.
open
Destroy
their
all
mouths to
untapped
speak,
creatures.
like
Oh
they would
my.
apologize. Whatever words they might have said died away as a sound suddenly sprang up behind
For
us.
3
back
mana?
through the metal door. The sound of a piano began to play. That wasn't the sound that caused all of our faces to go pale, though. That made the blood in my veins turn to ice and a gasp to escape my lips. No, that was because, along with the piano, came the sounds of people talking and laughing softly.
A few bucks for
Occasionally,
that?
the sound of cutlery or glasses being picked up and put down, punctuated in between. My breaths began to come
Tunnel
in
of
short,
hate.
ragged gasps as I slowly turned to look at the swinging door. Vinny was the one who spoke first, his voice barely above a whisper.
Oh, fuck.
I turned back to look at him. His mouth hung wide open, his lower lip trembling slightly. The sight frightened me more than the sounds emanating from back the way we'd come. Vinny isn't someone who spooks easily, after all. Then again, this isn't exactly your normal level of creepy shit. The sounds continued. I heard what sounded like a woman let out a particularly loud laugh. Wyatt spoke up.
What do we do?
The unspoken answer was one I've been trying to avoid in my head. Aside from the door, there's no other way out of the kitchen. I forced myself to take a step towards the door.
Nate, what the hell are you doing?
Vinny hissed at me, but I ignored him, taking another step forward. With each step I took, the feeling of terror I'd had yesterday returned, rearing its ugly head to begin tearing apart my insides. I pictured dozens of shadowy figures waiting just on the other side of the door, waiting for us to step out so they could rush us. But it was either set in the kitchen until the sounds went away, if they go away, or open the door and peek out. By the time I stood next to the door, my heart felt like I had just finished running a furlong, and sweat rolled down my face. God, please, don't let it happen again. Don't let them be there. Slowly, I reached out with a trembling hand, watching as it made its way to rest on the metal, which felt shockingly cold to the touch. I turned and gave one last look at the others. They looked absolutely petrified. As I began to turn back, a new sound came. This one louder, almost ear-piercing. Toot? I ripped my hand away from the door, clapping both over my ears as they threatened to burst. What the shit? It continued for a few moments, and the realization slammed into my brain what the source was. It's the freaking ship's horn. Then it ceased, dying away, but leaving the sound echoing in my head. Slowly pulled my hands away, looking up to see everyone else doing the same. That's when I realized everything had gone dead silent. Sounds of the piano and the people no longer came from the other side of the door. It was as if they'd never even been there in the first place. Turning, I saw the others had realized it as well. Wyatt suddenly strode forward, pushing past me and slamming his shoulder into the door. It flew open, softly hitting the wall behind it with a thunk, revealing the empty restaurant. As empty as it had been when we'd entered. For a moment, he simply stood there as we gathered behind him and looked out. Then he took 2 steps into the room.
No, there's no fucking way.
Softly muttered to himself. He swung around, an almost wild look in his eyes.
I mean,
Little gremlin.
you all heard that too, right?
Slowly, we nodded. His eyes darted around as he looked at
My
the
third
floor.
swarm
That's
weaver.
Freaking impossible. We're alone on the ship. But there were fucking people out here. People talking and shit. There was a fucking piano playing.
He suddenly swung around, raising his arms and screaming into an empty room.
What the fuck is going on?
The 3 of us slowly left the kitchen. Vinny went to stand beside Wyatt, trying to calm him down, but I could see that the experience had, for lack of a better phrase, royally screwed up the man's brain. That wasn't even half as terrifying as what I saw yesterday. Thought made me snap my head up and look around the restaurant, half expecting to see the shadowy figures emerging from the corners, but nothing stirred. The radio on my hip squawked.
Nate, come in right now. Over.
I reached down, trying to steady myself, took a deep breath, and thumbed the walkie-talkie.
I'm here. What's up, Cap?
The man's voice came again. I noted with a pang of surprise that there was a trace of anger in it.
Wherever your team is, get the fuck up to the radio room now.
I looked up from the radio, seeing that everyone had turned to look at me. Saw the same expression of confusion and worry as I must have had on my face. I hit the button again.
We're on our way.
Sparing a last look around the restaurant, I motioned for the others to follow as I hurried for the hallway.
So you're telling me that none of you managed to get inside the radio room and rip out the microphone?
The captain demanded, the veins in his neck bulging out from barely disguised rage. Everyone stood in front of the radio room, which now hung wide open, the metal door swinging slightly, letting out soft creaks. I looked inside, seeing the ancient setup sitting along the left wall of the room. My eyes ran over all the equipment stacked neatly on top of each other, finally coming to rest on the place where the microphone used for transmitting radio calls stood. I should say where it should have stood. Instead, the space lay bare, and I saw that it hadn't been gently pulled out of the system either. Frayed and snapped wires hung from the jack still hooked into the radio, showing someone had ripped it out with great force. I finally found my voice.
No, no! None of us would ever do that. Not when we want to get off this ship.
Shot a glare at all of us, and shook the keys in his hand for emphasis.
So you expect me to believe that while we went to hunt for these, that the room just happened to unlock itself, and the microphone just happened to tear itself out and walk away?
Vinny spoke up.
Look, Cap, Nate's telling the truth. We were nowhere near here, and none of us would sabotage a rescue like this.
The man's eyes snapped up to look at him. I saw Spencer shoot an accusatory look at us.
Then where exactly were you? Considering that the captain called you over 20 minutes ago and told you to meet up with us right away.
A wave of confusion washed over me.
What the hell are you talking about, Spence?
He rolled his eyes at me.
Oh, come on, dude. Don't give me that confused look bullshit. The captain radioed you and said we found the keys. When you asked him if you four should meet up right away, he said yes. Then you said that you guys were on your way and you'd meet us here.
A mix of shock and further confusion began to rise in me as I saw Wyatt and Vinny exchange puzzled looks.
No, that ain't right,
Wyatt finally said.
Nate asked the question, all right, but when the captain replied, he told us to keep going and search the restaurants for food and supplies.
Captain turned an incredulous eye on Wyatt.
What restaurants?
Nobody ever said anything about restaurants to me. I just said to try and find some food and supplies.
Everyone began to argue, but the sound was drifting away from my ears as my mind raced. He's right. He never said anything to me about restaurants before we split up. Just supplies. Shiver shot up my spine as another dot connected. And I never said anything about the restaurant when I replied to him. He was the one who the realization slammed into me like a truck. I felt all the blood drain from my face as a simple but terrifying conclusion came to the surface.
That wasn't the captain.
Everyone stopped arguing to stare at me.
What?
Andrew asked, seeming confused. I slowly turned to look at the three who'd been with me, quietly repeating myself.
That wasn't the captain who was talking to us.
I saw the realization slam into Wyatt and Vinny's faces, saw their faces turn as pale as mine was.
Oh, fuck no.
Wyatt whispered, his eyes beginning to frantically dart around in their sockets.
Somebody want to explain to me just what the hell you're saying?
The captain demanded, but I didn't answer. I stared at the shocked and frightened faces of my crewmates. My two crewmates. Forced my voice out in a squeak.
Where's Will?
Everyone went silent as they began to look around. Then they began to call his name. Finally, everyone began to run around, searching for our missing friend. Spencer dashed up the stairs to the bridge, returning later to confirm it was deserted. Panic began to well up inside me as he moved from the bridge back down to the promenade deck. The guy was here not even 5 minutes ago. How the hell did he slip away?
Will!
I heard the captain call as he led the way to the main lounge, which stood as empty as it had when we left. He looked around, a look of panic on his face.
Where the hell did he go?
As he continued to run for the other end of the room, a thought slowly began to push forward in my mind. For the life of me, I still can't explain why it came to me, but the more it persisted, the more I became convinced I was right.
The Veranda Grill.
I shouted out. Everyone turned to look at me, realizing most of them didn't know what I meant. I stabbed towards the aft section of the deck.
The restaurant we went to.
Wyatt and Vinny's faces changed as their minds clicked. Moments later, the three of us were racing down the hallways, the others struggling to keep up. We took the stairs down to the restaurant deck two at a time, the marble steps threatening to fling our feet out from under us. Reaching the landing, we sprinted past the purser's office and down the hall. I didn't even spare a glance at the still open porthole. I didn't look at anything until we reached the entrance to the Veranda Grill, where I stopped dead in my tracks.
Would you stop running?
The captain began, but his voice died away as he heard it as well. Everyone stood as still and silent as a statue, listening. There were voices.
I'm a sleepy
Just out of sight
boy,
around the corner.
but I
Felt my
can't
pulse
go to
quicken and
sleep
my heart
yet.
began to pound again. The first
'Cause then
voice
I'll
I
wake up
instantly recognized
and not be
as
able to go back to
Will's.
sleep.
The man's snorting laughter was unmistakable. But it was the second voice, a woman's voice, that, for yet another time that day, froze my blood in my veins. Like Will's voice, the voice spoke too softly for me to be able to make out any specific words. But it was loud enough, I was able to make out one specific detail.
How many more of these do we
The
have?
woman spoke with a clear British
Holy cow, we've
accent.
got quite a few.
Redeemed.
No, now that makes it weirder because it's a crew of British men being like, "Was that woman
Redeemed.
British?" No. It should have been
Redeemed.
saved for the. It should have been saved.
One,
for this
2,
scenario.
3, 4,
Shut up. Shut up,
5,
sorry. You are
7,
no, absolutely not. Okay,
8,
shut up. Quit.
9, 10,
What the
11,
actual
12, 13.
Andrew managed out.
Baker's dozen.
I slowly turned to look at the captain. His face had turned white as a sheet, and I saw his lower lip.
Got a ways to
quiver.
go.
Then it set, and he strode forward.
Captain, no.
I whispered, reaching out to snag his arm, but he tore himself out.
Living
of my
phone,
grip
that's a
and
new
walked
one.
into the
When Living
restaurant.
phone dies, look at the top
Instantly,
5
the
cards of your
voices stopped
library. You may
speaking,
reveal a
simply
creature
stood
card with
there,
power 2 or less from
staring
among them
at something
and
out of
put
sight.
it into your
gestured
hand.
for us
Put
to
the
come
rest on
join
the
him.
bottom of your
I
library in
walked
random
quietly to
order.
stand next to him. The restaurant was empty, looking exactly as it had when we'd left, with one exception. At a table near the piano, Will sat with his back to us. He didn't turn around to me, simply continued to sit and
What?
stare at the wall.
Acrobatic
Before we
cheerleader?
exchanged a look, the captain led us over to him. As we approached him, I suddenly became aware of the
Those
smell
damn orphans
of the
again.
restaurant, one which was
Orphans of the
impossible to
wheat.
miss. Perfume. It grew stronger as we stepped
Killer's
next to him.
mask,
For a
that's kinda
moment,
neat.
I was terrified that we'd see him dead, his mouth wretched open in a silent, unending scream. Instead, to our surprise, a happy, content smile adorned his face.
Mana Council, we've gotten
His
one of
eyes were glazed
those.
over, almost as if he were
Vengeful
drunk.
Possession. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap it. It gains haste until end of turn. You may
Captain
discard a
finally
card.
asked,
If you
his
do, draw a
voice low
card.
and gentle. At his words,
Nifty.
he swung his head to look at all of us.
Oh, hey, guys.
He said, his voice sounding almost like a character in a cartoon who'd been shot by Cupid's arrow. Wyatt spoke up.
Dude, where'd you go? You scared the hell out of us.
Will shrugged his shoulders.
I'm sorry about that, everyone. I just met the most wonderful woman.
He let out a content
A boy's
sigh.
in love with a ghost.
The woman of my dreams, for sure.
You're dreaming, that's for sure.
A chill ran up my spine at his words.
What woman?
I managed out. He smiled.
Her name's Diana. She's an actress,
Mhm.
a singer. So intelligent and interesting. God, what a woman.
Then he turned more towards us,
Children of the
exposing
wheat.
the other side of his face. If I hadn't felt so mentally fried, I might have gasped. There's a red lipstick mark on Will's right cheek.
Oh.
The kind you get when a woman wearing it kisses you. It stood out clear as day, and even from this distance, I could still see it looked wet. Will's smile grew.
She likes me, you know.
Hmm.
He declared, looking like the happiest man in the world. In any other situation, it'd be a sight that would warm my heart and make me happy for the man. In this situation, it scared the ever-loving shit out of me.
Okay, this is too fucking creepy.
Spencer finally said, his voice trembling slightly as he looked around the restaurant. You're not kidding, man, I silently said. The captain turned to us, worry now clearly etched on his face.
Does anyone know what the hell is going on?
It's time to come clean and tell him. To all of them the truth, I forced myself to speak.
As much as I wish I didn't, I think I do.
Everyone turned to me. Took a deep breath, then I began to speak. Told them everything. But all the things you guys said, the things they denied, about the horrifying things I saw in the darkened hallway yesterday, and about what the four of us experienced. Not even half an hour ago, right in this very restaurant. As I spoke, I
One
saw
mana,
some of the roommates' faces
3/3.
go pale, Others seemed to fight what I was saying. I
Delirium.
saw
Patchwork
Spencer and
Beastie
Andrew
can't
didn't believe
attack
a
or
word I
block
said,
unless there
or
are
at least
4 or
didn't
more
want
card
to,
types
and I saw
among
that the
cards in
captain
your
did.
graveyard.
When I
At the beginning of
finished,
your
there was a
upkeep,
long
you may mill a
silence.
card. You may
The
put
captain
the
spoke.
top card of your
I'm
library
not
into
entirely
your
sure I
graveyard.
believe all this, but this is the actual proof, Elizabeth,
Interesting.
and we're aboard an actual ghost ship. But this,
He gestured
Interesting.
to Will's still smiling face and the lipstick on his face.
Immune with
This-
evil.
this is all I need to see to make up my mind.
He looked over at me.
Ooh, roller
We have
coaster
over a
ride.
week
That's
and a
interesting
half's
looking.
food and water left. We're going to gather it up and lower one of the lifeboats. We're going to row the fuck away from the ship as fast as we can. And we're going to pray we make it back to land.
At his words, Will's face suddenly turned worried.
No.
Roller crusher.
No, I don't want to leave. Not after meeting Diana. I want to stay.
The captain grabbed Will by the arm and hoisted him to his feet.
Frankly, son, I don't give a damn what you want. We're leaving now.
The younger man began to protest and struggle, trying to wrench himself out of his grasp, but the captain was stronger and he pulled him towards the exit. He was almost
That's a cool
shouting
looking
as we entered
swap.
the hall.
Get the fuck off me! I don't want to fucking go back to that shitty, fucked up world that's 2023. I want to stay. She said I could stay. That's my dream, to stay forever in the 1950s. It could be real.
I felt a chill at his words, but continued following the captain. We just reached the bottom of the stairs when a huge vibration surged up through the floor into our feet. It was so strong that I nearly fell on my ass.
The hell was that?
What's up, baby?
Vinny spoke the same words aloud.
I've got some electrical tape. Will that work?
Deep, low-pitched hum that slowly began to intensify. I suddenly saw the captain's face pale
Well,
even
fine.
further than it already had.
What?
He breathed, then began tearing up the stairs, dragging Will behind him.
Oh,
As we
cool.
followed, I suddenly realized why he reacted the way he did. When I was a little child in the 90s, I traveled aboard a cruise ship with my aunt and uncle, and I clearly remembered the noise the giant engines made as they powered up before we left port. The engines are starting. Everyone raced for the nearest door to the outside deck. I prayed that I was wrong, that the ship would still be dead in the water when we emerged outside. I wasn't. When we emerged on the deck in the fading light, it was to see that the ship had begun moving, accelerating far quicker than I thought such a huge ship ever could. The water at the stern stretched out behind us in a foam, churned up by the ship's huge propellers. As we stood on the deck, I felt a sinking, hopeless feeling fall over me. We can't escape in the
Patchwork
lifeboat now,
Beastie.
be sucked under and torn apart. Slowly, silently, everyone turned away from the sight, unsure looks in their faces, except for Will's. More grinning, ecstatic look. We're back in our cabins now. We've partnered up, each having 3 or 4 people per room. Nobody wants to be alone now. The captain took Will into his room, refuses to let him out of his sight. The doors are firmly locked, though I doubt after what I've seen, if they truly want in, they'll find a way. And the fire axes we've brought into the rooms with us won't do a damn bit of good. Somehow, the others have fallen asleep. Spencer and Andrew on the giant bed, Wyatt on the floor with a blanket and pillow. I think I'm the only one still awake. The ship doesn't want us to leave. Enough to fire up its own engines to take off, or where, I don't know. I'm terrified. I don't know what's going to happen to us. I want to ask you what we should do now, but I don't know if any of you would have any idea of what to do in a situation like this. And yet, I have to. It's the only shred of hope I have left. So please, what should we do? How can we attempt to stop the ship? How in the hell can we defend ourselves against things that are already dead? And what the hell's happening to Will? And did that woman he spoke of, Diana, what did she do to him? I was about to finish, but I have to tell you of 2 final things.
The good
2
puppers.
things that scare me almost more than anything that's happened today.
Reaping peeper.
The first is that I hear music. Not music over the intercom, but actual live music, filtering in through the door and walls. It's an old song, one I recognize, a song my grandmother used to listen to constantly. A big band song called In the Mood by Glenn Miller. Worse is that I hear voices. I hear laughter, and occasionally I hear screaming. But that's not the part that scares me the most. That fills me with an existential dread. As I was sitting here typing, something was forced under the door. When I flicked on my flashlight with shaking fingers and aimed it, Saw one of those
Ooh,
programs
jump
like the one I
scare.
found yesterday. When I went over to it, though,
You doing
I
all right,
saw
my
it was
love?
different. A smiling cartoon octopus stared up at me from
Oh, the
corner.
UV thing.
One that was playing a trumpet and violin, its tentacles holding the same objects.
That
had
shit
been
was
on another
delicious.
program. When I flipped it open with shaking hands, I saw two things that made me want to scream. The first,
You ask Katie if she wants
was
to
the
trade
date on the
Elena.
upper right-hand corner.
She can still be gay. I just want her
December
food.
6th,
Oh, yeah.
2023. Second is what was on the left-hand page under the notices bulletin. We would like to welcome aboard our newest
Love you,
passengers,
woman.
Gabrielle Lerner, Wyatt Strosky, Vincent Gaetano, William
Oh,
Jenkins,
it's
Andrew
him.
Weber,
You haven't
Spencer
fed the
Michaels,
cat.
and Nathan Rogers. We
Oh,
hope
poor
you enjoy
kitty.
your stay with us.
What'd you feed the beta fish
God
today?
help us.
End of part 3 into part 4. Definitely taking a shining
Love.
round for sure, which I'm enjoying.
What did you feed him?
Maybe not specifically, because like my idea of The Shining was it was all about like Jack's mental break, like the
Of
members
this?
of the hotel were convincing him to
Found
murder
the
his
other bug
family,
bites.
right?
Oh.
This seems more so like everyone's.
Okay,
Like
good.
maybe they're pulling.
Yeah,
in,
same brand, bug
Will
bites.
I
with
think
the
it's
Because
seduction
I've fed him
route.
some
It feels
bloodworms
one
yesterday,
by
so
one
I like to
is what I'm
swap,
thinking. But
switch it
what I
up from
think
time
is
to
that, yeah,
time.
it's going to
Keep
lure
his
you in,
diet
and I think it's going to
varied.
make you not want to leave. Like it's going to basically
Yeah.
it's
What?
going to tantalize you to stay. Like I'm guessing all these
Yeah, I've
other
noticed
souls
that.
were-
That little, like,
Oh, there's an example. There's
Yeah.
for example, I know there's several about like a place where you die. And
He's
your
still
spirit
acting
doesn't
healthy and
leave,
everything.
right?
I mean, it's a form of purgatory because what I'm reading at it right
Yeah,
now is that I think that maybe they died
I'll look into it. I noticed that yesterday.
during that wave, like when the ship.
Oh, that's an interesting idea. Yeah.
That's what I'm.
Maybe they just
That's
died
kind of what
on the
that's kind of
ship.
what I've been thinking, in that this is like the ferry, the ferryman basically is like they're on it, and now that they're
Yeah.
on it,
Gary,
now it's going to start moving. You know.
What?
What is
Gary,
Pirates of the Caribbean
Okay.
3, right? You flip the ship and you're in the underworld, right? You're on the other side.
It's been a long time since I've seen Pirates of the Caribbean 3, so I'm not really sure.
well, no, you remember the scene where like they have
Yeah.
to go get Jack from the afterlife, so they flip the boat by running back and forth across both sides of it.
I don't. The only thing I really remember about that series is Will Turner continuously saying, "That's my dad. That's Bootstrap Bill."
Okay. Those movies are incredible. They are great.
I
They're
didn't-
excellent
I'm not saying
effects,
they're
they're
not. I'm
excellent
just saying I
style.
haven't
You
seen
are
them in a long
putting
time.
them down a little bit with that
No,
attitude.
I'm not.
But there is a scene in the third one where they have to go into the afterlife, and you do it by flipping the ship at sunset. So they like flip the ship by running back and forth. The point I'm making is that similar here, maybe the ship flipped, they all died, and they're in this afterlife, and everything that's happened since then, like coming across the Elizabeth, was a
Ooh,
part of
jump
that.
scare.
Or the figure in the clouds or whatever is just kind of like a vessel that this Queen Elizabeth ship travels through. Who knows? But as mentioned with the earlier parts, this is great. This is so much fun. There's not and I understand why, but there's not a lot of horror stories we read that just want to have fun, right? Like a lot of them are so, and they're good stories. I'm not saying they're not, but a lot of them are so like, it has to be a home invasion, or it has to be like there's this one scary monster. It takes itself seriously, and a lot of them deserve to be taken seriously. But this one's just like fun. Like you have a crew of like salty sailors who are aboard a ghost ship that burned down in the 1970s. Like that's great.
Yeah. No, I think it's a lot of fun. I think once again, it's just strong characters, good conflict that's happening, that's keeping us engaged. And I think that it's like the
Interesting.
cherry on top is the paranormal ghost ship that's happening. Like that's the thing that is making it so sweet. But really, at its core, it's a fun, isolated, basically desert island kind of meme. You know, people stuck together. You know, fighting for survival. There's fear building, anticipation, and now one of them's gone absolutely mental.
It's doing very well. I'm stoked. I couldn't be happier with where it's at right now. So, part 4. The captain is dead. Oh.
Well, that's a way to start it off, my God.
Oh, no. Oh, that's so rough. No, I'm sorry. Come back.
So we're staying in
didn't
part
mean it.
3.
Oh, I loved the captain. He was such a cool character. He was like, I imagined him as like Captain Price. Oh, no.
I have a feeling
Oh,
that
man.
we're not. This isn't the last we'll see of him, though, I think.
You think it'll be a ghost or something like that?
I think so. I think it's going to be a Jack Torrance situation, like The Shining, or whatever the fuck his last name is in that movie, a book.
When we first started today, the 7 of us were thoroughly creeped out, terrified of what might lie in wait for us as we woke in our cabins. Me especially, after hearing the music, voices, and screaming filtering in from down the hall, and the very lounge we'd slept in for the last 2 nights. But I never imagined that when the day would end, there would be 2 less of us. 3, technically. As hard as it may be to concentrate on anything but that horrible fact, I'll try and get to what you guys have said and commented. To say I appreciate everything you've suggested, to say all of us are thankful would be a massive understatement. I feel like you guys are what's helping me to cling to the last vestiges of sanity remaining in my mind. To the people who have commented about making it to either the engine room or the bridge to try and stop, sabotage, or even change the course of the ship, that was the very idea that the captain came to us with when we gathered. But as I'll explain in a minute, it seems I don't know what to call them, ghosts, entities, evil spirits, hell, demons, for all I know, anticipated the move on our parts. So I'm sure, like, this is part of the thing, like the ARG interacting with the comments and stuff like that. But I never get that from these stories, because every time I scroll the
Just straight up
comments, the
Saw.
first 5 are like, have you thought about killing yourself?
Thank you for the writing tip. Thank you. You really did give me a light
The
to
hope.
be guided by. Yeah. Yeah, no. I mean, for the
Ooh.
context of this story and it being on No Sleep, it's fine, but I always just wish these weren't in
Fine,
this.
that's
I
neat,
just wish it would just get
right?
me in more,
Just rip it out of.
Yeah,
No Sleep, pretend
sometimes
like
it's
not there
nice. I
yet.
think that, but now after we've done so many, I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I'm more compelled by the story than it is to keep up the visage that this is like real.
Yeah, and thankfully it seems to just be the first couple and last couple paragraphs. But
Well,
I'm with you.
And,
just ditch
and
it.
to be fair, I mean, the No Sleep rule guidelines for posting here are like cutthroat. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they have to include it in every segment that they do.
Yeah, there's a good chance.
Yeah.
Salt was one of the few ingredients we didn't seem to find in the veranda grill, though from what the map of the ship shows, there are numerous more restaurants on board. So we're going to keep our eyes open for it. I just hope you'll be right about these things being unable to cross it. To the person who mentioned the Morse code transmitter, I'd forgotten to mention last night that it had been torn out along with the radio microphone. These things very much do not want us trying to call for help. We're most definitely not splitting up anymore, either. Knowing what we do now, it's just too dangerous, even if it means more slower going. But I should get on and tell what happened. The 4 of us were woken up by several
Interesting.
rapid bangs on our cabin door.
I didn't know that was
After
a
seeing
thing.
the
I
program,
like that
which had
art.
been shoved under the door last night, I was only able to catch small spurts of sleep. Ones that were all interlaced with horrendous nightmares of dozens, hundreds, thousands of the specters outside pressing up against our cabin, asking us to open the door and inviting us to the party down the hall, before bursting into laughter and screams. So when the knocking began, I shot up from where I'd been curled up on the room's love seat, my clouded, half-asleep mind filling with panic and terror. They're here for us. However, the voice on the other side of the door filled us with a momentary sense of calm. It was the captain's voice. But, remembering what had happened with the walkie-talkie yesterday, Wyatt shushed us and crept to the door, putting his eye against the peephole. He stood there for a moment, pulled away, a look of relief in his eyes.
It really is him.
He breathed out before unlocking the door. Instantly, the captain strode in, followed close behind by Vinny. For a moment, the relief returned, till I realized that they were alone. He answered my unmasked question before I was able to open my mouth.
Will's gone.
He put a hand over his face, taking a deep breath before continuing.
I don't know how he managed to slip out without waking me. But when Vinny woke up a few minutes
Oh,
ago to use
this
the
just
bathroom,
Saw.
we found our cabin door
Equipped creature
unlocked and
gets
standing open.
2/0 whenever a
There's
equipped
no
creature
sign of it
attacks. You may
anywhere.
sacrifice a
The
permanent
man's words hung
other
and
than that
tension
creature
and
or
dread
Saw.
filled the
If you
air.
do, draw a
Every
card.
single one of us knew exactly where he'd gone. He's gone off to find that woman again, Diana. Finally, the silence was broken by Andrew.
So,
Interesting.
what do we do?
A pained look crossed the captain's face.
I'm honestly torn, boys. Part of me thinks we should immediately try finding him, if it's not already too late. But another part thinks we should try and find any way to either stop the ship or sabotage the engines.
He looked over at me.
Nate, have you checked the computer to see what those people have said?
I shook my head and began to turn to boot up the laptop when I caught sight of the program lying on the floor. I knew if I showed it to them, the already palpable fear infecting our group would grow. But at this point,
But what does it
anything
mean when
might
it comes
end up
back
being a
as an
fatal
enchantment?
mistake. They need
Can you
to
still
see it.
attack with it?
I cleared my throat.
Sir, before I do that, there's something you all need to see.
I picked up the
There's some
program
really
and handed
cute
it to the
alternate art of
captain.
this. I like that.
Everyone crowded around as he flipped it open.
Interesting.
Saw the men's faces turn pale as they read the notice inside. Saw their own names written there. Andrew let out a shaky breath.
Oh.
I think me starting to turn into a believer of the whole ghost ship idea.
After that, we quickly broke out the laptop and checked her comments. After reading them for a few moments, Wyatt pointed.
Getting close to the end of this box.
Cap, looks like they have the same idea you do about either taking control of the ship or straight up sabotaging the engines.
The captain stared for another second at the screen before nodding.
Then that settles it. We head first back for the bridge.
Nothing
and
on
if that
this one.
doesn't
That's
work, the engine
silly.
room.
No.
He gazed seriously around at all of us.
From now on,
Silly,
we
silly,
don't
silly.
split
Just
up
an
from each other
advertisement.
at all. It'll
Silly.
mean things will be done slower, but in my personal opinion, it just might be safer,
Shot a glance back at the open door to our cabin.
especially with Will being who knows where on board.
Putting away the laptop, I quickly took a moment to set the solar charger on the lip of the porthole to gather a charge.
Give in to
Laptop's
violence.
battery
Target
had
creature
gotten
gets
precariously low.
2-2
The
and
six
gains
of us
lifelink
moved
until
out
end
of
of
the
turn.
hall, closing
Interesting.
the door behind us. We now carried 3 fire axes we'd taken from red emergency
tentacle
boxes
stuff
scattered
going on
around the
there.
ship. My head swung on a swivel as we passed each T-junction.
Exercise.
something,
Exile.
Now
Target
someone
artifact, enchantment, or
lunged
creature
us
with
from
power
around
4 or
corner.
greater.
Silence, only broken by
Get
the low
out.
throbbing sound of the ship's engines
Shroud
rising from far
Stomper.
below us, didn't help the tense atmosphere that had fallen over us.
Whenever Shroud
didn't know
Stomper
if I was
enters
more
or
afraid of running
attacks,
into the
each
ship's
opponent. Oh, I think I already got one of
inhabitants
these.
Or our own colleague.
Ooh,
So,
7 mana.
What's the over
3, 2 white, 2 black.
that one of them
Holy
has a
cow.
hallucination and kills another one with an axe.
I mean, I
That's
would say
cool.
It's got to be the
Chainsaw. When
right.
chainsaw enters, it
Not
deals
even
3
probably
damage
over.
to up to one target
I think that
creature.
it more than likely
Whenever
that's what
one or more
happened.
creature
I
dies,
agree. I
Die.
agree.
Damn it,
I
die.
think my money
put
says
a rev
that's how
counter
the
on
captain dies,
chainsaw.
so
Equipped
my
creatures
prediction-
get
my
plus X
prediction.
plus 0, where X is
When
the
we
number
reached
of
the
rev
door to the
counters on
lounge,
chainsaw.
However, all thoughts evaporated in my head as
That
we
planes
froze,
is kinda
staring
sick.
into the room. It still looked the same as it had yesterday, with 2 large exceptions. The first is that the race section
like
of
that
floor
art.
near the back of the room where a band would play, one that was desolate and empty when we'd arrived, no longer was. Even from across the room, I saw instruments set up on it. Violins, trumpets, bass, a drum set, and more were set up as though they'd just been put down by a band. Realization flashed through my mind. The music I heard last night wasn't a hallucination. It was real. The second noticeable change in the room
I need to
was
figure out.
the
I'm new to all
after
this Magic
minutes of
Gathering. I need to
party.
figure out what like the best
Confetti
way
and
to
balloons with
organize
the
my
bossy
cards are.
helium needed to keep them afloat littered the dance floor, and on a few tables. we could
Is it
see
going to be
half
like by
empty wine
rarity and then
cocktail
by
glasses.
color
They had themselves one hell of a shindig last
and then
night.
like cost,
said
like
softly,
mana cost?
Shot a glance at him. The look on his face mirrored
I
the
don't know.
emotions I felt. In any other situation, the scene would have been one.
Then
to
you got
feel
different
happy
sets that
about.
have different
We were
like
celebrating something.
functions
now,
or
though,
whatever. Like
It
this one
evoked the
has
sort of dread
the
and fear that one would get stepping into a
whatever it
haunted house.
is.
The captain shook his head slowly, the gesture to us.
Come on, let's keep moving.
And moving quickly across the lounge, kicking balloons out of our way before heading to the bridge.
What the hell?
Spencer exclaimed as we stood in front of the hatch which led to the bridge area of the ship.
Some has the
Yesterday,
rooms,
stood
and then it
wide
also
open,
has
held in place by the metal hook which had been set into
what
an eye
is it?
swivel on the wall. But now, as we stared in disbelief, it had been tightly shut. Not just shut, but locked. Try as hard as we might, to the point our hands turned red and stung from exertion, the handle refused to spin.
You've got to be fucking kidding me.
Andrew muttered as the captain began patting at his pockets. His head snapped up, his eyes wide as he realized something.
The keys are gone.
He said before shaking his head.
Will must have lifted them from me before he snuck out.
The realization that we've been effectively blocked from reaching the helm caused the hopeless feeling we'd had yesterday, seeing the ship moving to return.
Was it dread? Is that the other
I
function
let it
this set
aside and
has?
put my back to the hatch, resting my head on the cool metal. After a minute, we slowly made our way down to the bowels of the ship. I already knew full well
Manifest
what we'd
dread.
find, but we still followed the increasingly hunched shoulders of the captain down the narrow, graded steps, flicking on our flashlights as the incandescent bulbs over our heads became fewer and farther between. When we reached the hold and rounded the final corner, I saw what I expected. The metal hatch, above which the words engine and boiler rooms were stamped, was closed. Wyatt suddenly burst into a sprint, pushing past the captain to the door, where he frantically, almost hysterically, began yanking on the handle. It's as if he hoped he'd be able to wrench it open by sheer will, but it remained steadfast. Finally, he stopped and began kicking the door.
Fuck you, you stupid fucking ship.
He screamed, his voice bouncing off the grated floor and pipes echoing away.
Jump
in the
scare.
gloom.
And fuck all of you dead, ancient, last century ass ghost.
He collapsed to the floor, beginning to cry softly. I couldn't do anything but watch, stunned by the man's apparent mental breakdown. Andrew, the captain, and Spencer moved to comfort him, leaving me and Vinny standing in the hallway. I shot a look to my left, seeing another closed and likely locked hatch. The sign above this door declared it the auxiliary machine room. Sign, I placed my head in my hands. They knew we would try this. They knew, and they got ahead to cut us off, likely with Will's help. I was just trying to calm myself when the sound, one that was almost so quiet I missed it, reached my ears.
Nathan.
I froze in place. A massive shiver racing up my spine at the call. It was
$5
replaced by a
card?
steady
5
stream
to
of
8?
chills as my eyes widened behind my fingers. For a moment I waited, barely breathing as I strained my ears to hear. My heart was doing the Macarena inside my chest. All I could hear was the soft hissing of the pipes that ran alongside us,
Look at that little guy.
heads in the ceiling, along with the soft voices of the men ahead of me. I forced myself to let out a deep breath, trying to relax. You're hearing things, buddy.
Focus.
It's just the pipes, nothing more. They're not down here with you. I was just beginning to believe it when it came again.
Tried to show you.
And this time, it was unmistakable.
Oh,
It was the man's voice I'd heard on the radio on the second day aboard, the one I'd heard through the radio. It called out to me in a mocking, sing-song manner. Without seeing anything, I knew the owner of the voice was smiling. Not a pleasant smile either.
That's creepy.
I slowly stood up straight, pulling my hands away from my eyes as my breath became ragged and shallow. Then, just when I thought it was impossible to feel any more frightened, the feeling of being watched came again. Now, from directly off to my right, another chill shot through me as I realized where I was standing. I was standing almost directly in the middle of a T-junction. Oh, shit. Swallowing hard, I slowly turned, aiming my flashlight with shaking hand down the hallway. I almost screamed. The shadowy figures were back. They stood at the end of the hallway underneath the sign labeled Water Softener and Air Conditioning Plant. I couldn't tell how many there were, but they packed the hall from one side to the other, standing just out of reach of my flashlight's beam. Horror and dread filled every crevice of my body, and I felt myself begin to shake. I attempted to speak, but the voice seemed to catch in my throat, and then they took a step forward. The horror I felt increased as I saw the overhead lamp wink out, plunging the next section into darkness. I found my voice struggling to pass a single word over my lips.
Fuck.
Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Vinny turn and look at me. The slight curiosity on his face immediately melted as he caught sight of the expression I wore.
Nate.
Oh, gremlin.
What
What
the hell's
focus now?
wrong?
He asked.
Focus on the gremlin.
I heard the others stop talking,
Look at it.
as well as them slowly begin to make their way back to me. I kept
There
trying
it
to
goes.
force more words out.
That little
I
guy.
have to warn them, my mind screamed at me. But it was as though I'd lost my grasp on the English language. I felt Vinny step next to me and saw his flashlight aimed down the corridor. and then I felt him go stiff as a board as he caught sight of what I'd seen.
Oh, shit.
And then a little louder.
Guys?
But now the rest of our group had reached us, and everyone collectively aimed their lights down the hall. I heard Wyatt suddenly began to hyperventilate as the figures took another step forward. Another overhead light went out.
Jesus.
The captain whispered. Spencer said nothing, but I knew he had to be scared shitless. Finally, face to face with what he denied about until now. As the third light went out, I finally found my voice again.
Gabe.
I felt the captain put a hand on my shoulder.
What is it, Nate?
Swallowed hard and spoke the words I knew in the back of my bones to be true.
I think it's time to start running now.
The next moment, all
Spider
of us were turning
toy?
and sprinting back the way we'd come. Behind
Switching
us,
doll?
I more felt than heard our pursuers give chase, and I heard a noise that chilled me to the bone. The sound of the overhead lights just behind us, not just clicking off, but shattering in their housings.
Add 1 mana of any
Walls rang
color.
out with
Put a
our
nest
screams and
counter on
shouts as
Twitching
we
Doll.
urged each other to move
Sacrifice
faster, reaching the stairs and beginning to
Twitching
climb.
Doll. Create a
Move your asses,
2/2
everyone.
green spider creature
Captain shouted
token
as he dragged Wyatt
with
off the top
reach
of the
for each
stairs.
counter on Twitching
As we
Doll.
climbed,
Activate
my eyes
only as a
flashed with metal
sorcery.
signs indicating what deck we were on.
Interesting.
We passed G deck, then F deck, making our way up. As we reached the top of the landing, I spared a look down, and this time, I did scream. The figures were swirling up after us. Some didn't even touch the floor, flying through the air in pursuit. I heard the whispers, laughter, and screaming I'd heard when I'd been cornered by the gym. This time,
Is that
however,
Bing Bong?
the voices somehow held even more malevolence than they originally.
Bing bong,
They're
bing
angry.
bong.
They're downright pissed that we just tried to sabotage the ship. I raced to keep up with the group. We just reached E deck when a loud clanging sound came from above us. I reached the bottom of the next set of stairs when the others had gathered
Toby
and looked
Beastie
up,
best
and
friend.
I almost screamed again. More shadowy figures were swirling down from above towards us. We were trapped in a pincher moment. No way to escape. For a moment, the existential dread I'd felt facing the rogue wave that night came again. And I felt sure this was the end of
The
us all
foil.
until Spencer let out a cry.
Look there!
Spinning around, I saw a closed hatch standing a few feet away from us. The sign above it read Cargo Motor Car Hold. I was the closest to it and leapt for it, my hands locking around the handle and praying that it wouldn't be locked. To my relief, though, the handle spun and the hatch swung open.
Come
Bing
on!
bong, bing bong.
I yelled, moving out of the way to let the others in. As soon as the captain dragged Wyatt through, I slammed the hatch closed as I heard the man's voice ring out again.
You're only delaying the inevitable, gentlemen.
I felt someone slam into the hatch next to me, turning to see Vinny begin locking the hatch. Reaching up, I did the same on my side. Not a moment too soon either. As soon as the last lock had flipped into place, something slammed into the hatch with the force of a speeding freight train. The two of us leapt back as the banging continued for a few seconds. Then abruptly, it stopped. An eerie, unsettling silence fell over the hold, and after fighting to get my breath back, I turned to look into the room. Crates and other large boxes rose high around us, seeming to go on forever. Directly ahead, my light glinted off something powder blue. Focusing my light, I saw it had found what looked like an old mid-50s Cadillac convertible. The top was down, and I saw a matching blue leather interior, accented with white stitching.
Damn it.
For a moment, everyone fought to find their breath. Then the captain spoke.
Okay, boys. We need to find a way out of this hold and back up to the upper decks. Try and find another exit. There has to be one.
Trying to stay as close to each other as we could, we began to move across the huge fold to find it. I stopped as I reached the Cadillac. Reaching out and putting a hand on the quarter panel, the cool metal felt nice against my sweaty hand, and I was suddenly overcome with the feeling that I was about to collapse. My legs felt like jelly under me. I need to sit for a minute. Sliding down, I put my back against the car and slid to the floor, putting my head in my hands. I felt myself begin to shake as the image of the figures chasing us replayed in my mind.
Get a hold of yourself, Nate. You're okay. You're okay. Just keep it together.
I whispered. Suddenly a voice came from nearby.
Dude, you okay?
It was Vinny. Not wanting him to see my fragile mental state, I chose to keep my head in my hands and nodded.
Yeah,
Bing bong, bing bong.
I just needed a few moments to collect myself after that.
I mumbled through my fingers. Vinny replied after a moment.
I get that, but you shouldn't split up from us. It's not safe. You know that by now.
I sighed. He was right.
I know, man.
I began before letting out a shaky breath.
I honestly don't know if we're gonna get off this ship alive, and that scares me.
Speaking the truth felt like a massive weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I felt the car rock slightly, indicating he'd leaned against it. He let out a deep breath.
Honestly, Nate, I've had the same thought.
For a moment, the man's words comforted me, knowing someone else felt the same. Then he continued.
But, I mean, maybe it won't be so bad.
Wah, wah, wah. And another one bites the dust. Vinny is gone. Goodbye, Vinny. Speaking
Ghostly
of another one
dancers.
biting the dust, there's 6 of them, right? Or 7, counting our narrator.
Right.
So Vinny's about to die, or he's going to be the next Will. The same thing that happened to him. But the line Vinny said where he was like, "You shouldn't walk away from the group like that." Did our narrator walk away, and that's what caused his hallucination early on?
I think
Because
so.
I figured that was okay.
Yeah.
Bedhead beast. It's
Confusion
literally,
washed over me. What?
literally a
Vinny's
bedhead.
voice came again.
I mean, come on. Eternity on board a classy ocean liner,
Creativity.
surrounded by people who just want others to join them. It can't be all that bad, right? You get to party forever after all.
Oh man, he let out a sort of laughter, but it hadn't sounded like the. Thank you, but it hadn't sounded like the way I knew Vinny laughed. His laugh was a deep, booming laugh. This one had been short and nasally. Another chuckle came. The realization suddenly flashed through me as I remembered the radio call yesterday. They can imitate our voices. Oh. A fresh dose of fear coursed through my veins as I slowly pulled my hands away from my head, suddenly feeling extremely vulnerable, realizing just how stupid I'd been. But there was nobody there.
I mean, after all, it is inevitable.
Oh, so hold on. So Vinny didn't make it then?
No, I don't think so. I think that they probably got him and they're imitating him now.
So for one, that's really cool. Because Will could have been like that the whole time yesterday or whatnot, and anyone could be like that at any point. You constantly have to do a head count. But also, do you think everyone else can see him or just our narrator? It's just in his head.
I'm guessing that everybody can see them, but I think there's because we're through the POV of the narrator that it's just more prominent
Yeah,
through him.
it's
But,
the way he sees it, yeah.
but we've seen or we've heard that the captain also went into like a trance-like state as well, or hypnotic
You're right,
state.
yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
guessing that everybody's feeling it, but I don't think everybody is fully telling each other what they've seen or what they,
Yeah,
feel.
everyone's being way too bravado, tough guy about this, and it's making everyone confused and die.
You know that, and
Because
also
no
I
one
think
will
it's
let-
a matter of. I think if you admit it, you believe it. So I think by trying to not
That's
admit
also
it, I think
true.
that you also are just trying to deny its plausibility and keep yourself a bit sane and not scare yourself.
It's like if I acknowledge it, then it becomes real,
Right.
right? So if I don't think about it, then it's all figurative. Until then, yeah.
Yeah.
The voice came directly over my head. I began to violently shake, beginning to hyperventilate as I heard all pretext to my crewmate's voice melt away. I was terrified to look
Only got
up,
4
but
left.
I couldn't help myself. Slowly, feeling as though I were about to die of a heart attack at any moment, I craned my neck to look above me. A pair of eyes stared down at me, peeking over the side of the Cadillac's hood. One that held both amusement and malevolence to them.
Creepy peeper.
The next few moments are nothing but a blur to me. The only thing I can remember is hearing my own shrill screams. That and blindly running away as I heard the confused,
cool.
terrified shouts of the others as they attempted to chase after me. I didn't even become cognizant of anything until I found myself in an unfamiliar foyer. Snapping back to reality, there goes gravity. Snapping back to reality, I looked around. I could hear the others' voices filtering up from below, calling out my name. Okay, our narrator's got to keep it together. He screams way too much. He's running. He's sprinting. Like, I understand this is a stressful scenario, but you're making things way more complicated.
What was that, my love?
There's one segment back there where I think he said he was
Baby?
about to scream like 5 times in a
What
row.
was that?
Like I'm fully imagining
About to
like
scream.
I'm gonna do it. I'm fully
Said what?
imagining like Shaggy levels of like,
Hmm.
let's
Yeah,
get
our
out of
narrator
here.
is definitely the kind of guy to run in place for a couple seconds before being able to actually move.
Yes, 100%. And it makes that noise. It's like, like the legs winding up. Yep. What just happened? Swallowing, I turned and looked over the railing. I could see the flashlights wildly aiming around. I swallowed, then yelled,
Here! I'm here!
A light flashed up, hitting me in the face, momentarily blinding me.
I found him!
I heard the captain's voice call.
Nathan, stay right where you are. We're coming up. All right.
I called back down, took a step back, aiming my light to see where I was. My light flashed off the sign which declared I'd somehow dashed all the way up to C deck. 3 decks? Then the image of the eyes staring down at me swam forward in my mind. Began to shake again, hearing the thing's voice imitating Vinny echo inside my head. Trying to calm myself, I took a few steps into the middle of the foyer, aiming my light around. It reflected off another sign, one that stuck out from the wall. First class swimming pool. Beneath it were a set of double doors which stood open, the light inside spilling out into the landing. I couldn't see much inside, so I took a few more steps until I could see clearly. I blinked a few times. Am I seeing things? I wasn't. The swimming pool was packed. I saw people in old-style bathing suits swimming in the pool. A woman wearing a bathing cap swam by heading left, doing the butterfly stroke. The happy cry of children laughing could be heard, and 2 suddenly flashed by the doorway as they chased one another. I realized music filtered out from the room as well. Old swing music, which was playing from an intercom inside. None of that was what caused me to gasp. It was who I saw standing across the other side of the pool. I struggled to find my voice before calling out.
Will.
At my call, he turned to look at me. A huge grin spread across his face, and he raised an
3
arm to
more.
wave at me. He looked nothing less like the happiest man on the planet, and he wasn't alone. A second pair of eyes had turned to regard me at my call. A pair of blue, almost sapphire eyes. Ones that, for a moment, made me feel as though I were falling under some kind of spell. Platinum blonde hair bobbed around the shoulders, and voluptuous lips pulled back into a smile. One that held equal amounts of warmth and eeriness to them. She wore a white turtleneck and slacks that accentuated her figure. A bracelet dangled from one wrist. The lips contorted into
That's
a smirk
cool.
as she snaked an arm around Will's shoulders. One eye closed in a wink. I'd never seen the woman before, but instantly I knew who she was. Diana. Do you want to explain what the moaning is that you were doing during that whole paragraph?
Excuse me?
Okay. Then the doors to the pool slammed shut on their own.
Will!
I screamed, sprinting for the doors as I heard the others reach the landing. I heard them call out to me, but I was ramming my shoulder into the doors, trying desperately to get them to open.
What's happening?
I heard the captain cry out.
Will, he's in there!
I screamed. Instantly, the others joined me in pushing.
Oh, that's
After
sick.
a moment, the door suddenly swung inwards, almost sending us into the pool. I froze, feeling a wave of shock flash through me. The pool was empty.
What? No, he was there. He was there, and there were dozens of people in here as well.
I began blabbering out.
There were people, and there was a woman next to him. I swear it had to be the one he was talking about, Diana. Then the door slammed shut, and
I trailed off, looking at the others. Some held frightened expressions on their faces, but some, like Andrew and Spencer, I saw confused, disbelieving looks on theirs. I felt a wave of anger flash through me.
I'm not crazy!
I suddenly began screaming.
I'm not fucking crazy! So don't you dare look at me like that! Not if the hell we just went through down below.
Instantly, I saw reality crash into them. Looks of guilt and shame passed over their faces. They know they're in the wrong here. Saw Spencer begin to open his mouth. Okay, from everyone else's perspective, they ran through the porthole, and then our narrator starts freaking out and screaming and sprints away. And then they find him 3 stories up, and he's like, but Will was here, and Diana, and a party, and I would tie him up.
I mean, he's definitely he feels the most manic out of all of them so
by far. He seems to be like, sure, him and the captain happened simultaneously on the first
more.
day or the first full day on board. But like, even then, the captain got a hold of himself, at least outwardly.
Well,
This guy is not.
makes me think that Nathan's going to kill the captain. Is what makes me think.
I didn't even think about that. That's pretty good. Well, I don't know. If he killed the captain, would they still give him his laptop and let him type out the story?
Well, that's the thing is that if he kills him, if he kills the captain and another person who, like, if he does it and the other person who stays alive doesn't realize that he's done it, and even Nathan himself doesn't realize he's done it, then maybe.
I see what you're saying. I got you. Like in one of his deliriums, he does it.
Right.
Nathan definitely seems the most susceptible. But I was cut off as Wyatt began to scream behind them.
You know what? Fuck this!
The others turned to see him running for another of the red boxes, which contained a fire hose and axe. To my shock, he punched straight through the glass with his bare hands, something that should have broken them. But somehow, he yanked an axe from it without a glance at his shredding and bleeding hands. His eyes danced wildly around in his sockets, and I instantly recognized that he'd gone off the deep end. He began to scream again, both at us and around him in general.
Fuck this, man. I've had it with these fuckers dicking us about and trying to drive us insane before they kill us. You fuckers want to get out? You fuckers want to get it on with me? Well, that's fine, because I'm coming for you.
And with that, he turned and bolted up the stairs for the upper decks. I mean, just let that guy go.
Wyatt, wait!
The captain yelled, but he was already out of sight.
Come on out, you 20th century shitheels.
I heard him scream. The captain turned to us.
Come on! We can't let him get too far away from us.
We all began sprinting up the stairs, following the man's voice as ranted and raved about wiping them all out. He really has gone over the deep end. He's yelling about killing already dead people with an axe. Pursuing Wyatt, we reached the promenade deck and stopped on the landing. Wyatt had stopped screaming. The entire
It's
ship
promenade,
had gone dead
but I
silent.
don't know.
Not just dead silent, a deadly silence that held the worst connotations to it.
Flashback.
Oh no, I thought. I saw the same realization reflected in everyone else's face. I swallowed.
Wyatt?
I called out, my voice muted, bouncing off the carpet and wooded paneled walls. There was no answer.
Wyatt, buddy, talk to me. Where are you at?
Andrew yelled out, still nothing. And then, slowly at first, a new sound began reaching us. The sound of sobbing and mumbling.
Please. Please, I'm sorry. Please, not that.
Wyatt?
Come on.
The captain urged us, leading the way down the hall towards the lounge. The door still stood open, and I could see the
Oh my
balloons
God.
and decorations
Baby, look at
still
that.
on the floor. As we drew close, my blood turned to ice as I heard Wyatt begin to scream, half angry, half terrified.
No, you're not doing that to me.
The captain yelled out.
Wyatt, we're coming.
He was the first to reach the
Oh,
doorway.
like it. Did it just
The axe
focus
suddenly
already?
swung around from the right side of the doorway faster than I thought
It
possible.
looks like it's popping out of
In
flesh.
that horrible split second, my lips began to yell out a warning, but it was too late.
No, I think it's actually a coat. but-
The axe buried itself into the captain's stomach.
Oh, and that
stopping
cat's
the older
definitely
man
made
dead
out
in
of
his tracks.
spiders.
I heard him let out a strangled cry, more of a gasp as he doubled over. The axe pulled out of him, blood spilling to the floor from the man's wound.
You can take it.
A moment later, White emerged from around the corner.
mean,
a wild, insane.
You can
rage
have
plastered
it,
on his
but put it
face.
here.
I got you. You fucking ghost.
He screamed in the captain's
And it's
face.
not something I
saw him
use. It's
raise
just
the
an art
axe again,
card.
this time high over his head as he screamed again.
Bleed, you shitter.
Yeah, it's one big
I saw
spider.
Vinny and Andrew begin rushing towards him, trying to stop what
My
they
gosh.
saw
And
was
then the
coming.
goose on his shirt,
Again,
half
I saw
cooked.
it was too late.
Half
Closed
cooked.
my eyes and
Yeah.
turned away quickly. I didn't want to see the axe slam into the captain's head. Head of the man who'd taken me under his wing and kept me
Yeah.
from going broke. To help pay for my aunt's funeral when she passed away, couldn't bear to. But I heard it, and it's a sound I'll never be able to forget. Horrified silence settled over the room, and I turned back feeling like I was about to vomit as I saw the axe buried into his skull. He lay on his back on the floor, a rapidly spreading pool of blood beginning to surround him, staining the carpet. Wide, horrified eyes stared unblinkingly up at the ceiling, and his mouth was frozen open in shock. The man was very, very dead.
Hmm.
Swung my gaze up. Vinny and Andrew had frozen in place, their arms still stretched out as if to still try to stop the atrocity that had just occurred. Spencer clapped his hands over his mouth, his face white as a sheet as his body shook uncontrollably. My eyes lifted to the blood-splattered face of the captain's murderer. The look of insane rage and bloodlust lingered in Wyatt's eyes for another moment. Then I saw it die away. Saw him snap back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity. Oh, there goes gravity.
Captain?
He asked in a whisper, looking down at the corpse. His breathing quickened, and he lifted his own hands to stare at them, as though he were just beginning to comprehend what he'd done. His eyes lifted to us, and I saw the panic begin to reappear in them.
I didn't know it was him. I ran into the lounge and I was completely surrounded by them. They said they were going to kill me, torture me for eternity for thinking about stealing from the purser's office. They called me a coward for crying and breaking down, dared me to attack them.
His voice rose to a scream.
Then they said their leader was coming in, and I heard there was a horrible voice coming from the hallway. I swing for my life. And
he cut off.
That's the whole Duskmourn play booster box.
He looked directly at me.
I'm sorry.
Then he turned and began sprinting through the
Couple
lounge
hours.
towards the companionway we'd taken to get
A
inside
couple
the
hours
first
stream.
night. We
Got
remained
off.
frozen for a moment, then began to chase
Open
after
today. I got a mid shift
Wait,
tomorrow, so
Finney shouted at him. Wyatt's terrified,
Ah!
hysterical scream flew back at us as he rounded a corner.
fuck you! I'm not staying on board the ship. I'll swim home if I have to.
2 hours
He slammed
34
into the final
minutes.
corner.
All right. Have a good one.